Afternoon, everybody. I am on. It is Tuesday, February 5th, 2019, about 2:01 p.m. Welcome to the Sustainability and Transportation Committee. My name is Mike O'Brien. I'm chair of the committee, joined by my colleagues, council members Johnson and Swant, and Jesse Rollins is staffing me today. Thank you for being here. We have a few items on our agenda today, but we're going to start with chair's report, and I'm going to invite someone from SDOT to come forward and just do a quick little update on the city's snow response for the last couple of days and see where we are. Yeah, come on forward. And thank you for being here on short notice. I imagine there's a lot of, you're busy right now?
Well, that's why I'm here.
Great. Why don't you do a quick round of introductions and then we'll jump in.
Karen Melanson, Deputy Director for Policy Programs and Finance at SDOT.
Heather Marks, Director of Downtown Mobility at SDOT.
Thank you both for being here. And again, I know in a world a month ago, it's like we'll just be through the Seattle squeeze and everything will be getting back to normal. And then, I don't know, it's not a named storm yet, but we get this, so great. But I wanted to take a minute just because I know that obviously the snow and ice is impacting a lot of folks and how they're getting around, and wanted to take a minute to get just an update on how things are going from an operational standpoint from SDOT.
Absolutely, and I'm here not because I'm in charge of any kind of snow anything, but all the folks who are in charge of that are doing it. So
we don't want to pull them away from that.
I'm pinch hitting. Hope this will be satisfactory. So the snow and ice crews started around noon on Sunday and have been treating all of our emerald and gold routes. They've treated all of them probably 4 or 5 times by now, so they continue to go out. And they treat them with either a salt brine, magnesium chloride brine solution, or granular product depending on the temperature and atmospheric conditions. We have about 35 plows out in the field now and 15 hand crews responding to particular downtown sidewalk problems as well as ADA ramps. We're in constant communication with our partners at WashDOT, but for this incident, more importantly, with King County Metro. The biggest challenge is the storm kept going, right? Our internal metric is that 12 hours after it stopped snowing, we'll get everything cleared. And it just didn't stop snowing for a really long time, and so we had to go out and continually treat in order to stay ahead of that. We really appreciate everybody's patience and particularly appreciate people avoiding travel if they could. We're in practice because we've had 3 weeks of viaduct closure. We just want to remind folks also that if you do have to drive, slow down, leave lots of space. It's not the same kind of conditions as when the roads are bare and dry. Make sure you're prepared with chains and weather-appropriate clothing. Take transit if it's an option. That's always going to be a better choice. And make sure the adjacent property owner, so I'm in charge of clearing the sidewalks in front of my house. The adjacent property owner is always in charge of clearing the sidewalks, whether you're a commercial owner or a residential owner. So I want to make sure that folks remember that, because sidewalks can be really treacherous if folks don't take responsibility for clearing. We've focused all of our resources on the critical arterials. Several years ago, we had a big snowstorm.
Vaguely recalled that one.
Do you remember that? After that, we got together with King County Metro and identified the most critical routes for emergency services, for freight, and for transit. So that's how we identified our emerald and gold routes, which you can find on the map. The storm is forecast to return on Friday, so everybody's still at it until all that danger has passed.
Great. Appreciate highlighting the responsibility of adjacent property owners and want to just remind folks that especially when we have an incident like this and people are not driving, and we appreciate they're relying on getting around on foot a lot more. And it's so easy when conditions are like this, just a little fall can have a lifelong impact of something going wrong. And so keeping those areas clear, and we know that not everyone's capable of going out and clearing their own sidewalk. And so if you're adjacent to some neighbors that might need some help and you can clear a couple block faces aside or a couple property faces of sidewalks, that's always welcome. Colleagues, any other questions or thoughts you want to share? Great, I really appreciate it. Quickly on metro routes, my sense is that most of them are up and running, and the arterials that I've been on all seem to be pretty operational.
That's right. I think that they're going to be on snow routes until further notice. So I live in West Seattle. They're not heading up into Arbor Heights, so people can hike down to Roxbury.
Going up the hill in Island Park either.
So folks should be aware of that, and their website is actually pretty good for understanding what those snow routes are. And then as soon as, it's all passed, I'm sure we'll get back to normal.
Great.
Whatever normal means anymore.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you both being here. Thanks for coming on short notice.
Happy to.
So we're going to jump into public comment next, and I have about 10 folks signed up. You'll each have 2 minutes to comment. Alex Zimmerman, you're going to be first, followed by Emily Minetti and Ann McCullough.
Thank you, sir. Where is my face? Goebbels, where is my face?
It's on your head.
Show me. Oh, nice guy. I like you. Sieh heil, my dirty Führer. A Nazi with Gestapo principle. A dirty anti-Semite, crook, criminal, and killer. My name Alex Zimmerman. Yeah. I spoke every day. Yeah, I like this. Nice business. Guys, what are you talking about? Streetcars? Bike? Who pay for this? My question very simple. Who pay for everything? Who pay for tunnel, for sound transit? Who pay for everything? I ask you very simple question. Why we need to pay $1 billion and $1 billion for something that is absolutely not important? But we cannot find $100 million for homeless. 200 people die every year. For many years, you cannot find the money. I live in this city more than 30 years, And I try to understand why freaking all these fucking idiots here. I'm a business consultant. I cannot understand. 200 people die, not enough. 50% need a housing, 250 housing we need right now. 250,000. We don't have money. But we have money for this kamikaze. And you, sir, and I told you before, Mr. Bryan, Consul Bryan, you cannot be in this committee because it's conflict of interest because you're a member of Bicycle Club for many years. And I told you this before from beginning when you start. So right now I speak to everybody, freaking idiot, and emerald degenerate Seattle idiot. When we stop in paying $1 billion for idiot who sit here? I ask you, where? We will stop in paying. Stand up, America, stand up, Seattle. We need to clean this dirty chamber from this crook. It's a criminals. It's a killer. Thank you very much.
Emily?
Hello, my name is Emily Minetti. I lead transportation policy for the Downtown Seattle Association, a member organization of the Seattle Streetcar Coalition. I am here today on behalf of our 1,000 members and over 1,300 Center City ratepayers to support the Center City Streetcar Connector project. We are pleased that the project was given a green light to proceed. This project makes sense. It leverages existing local transit investments and secures federal funding for Seattle to make what will be the only investment in high-capacity transit to come online until 2035. We need this project now. Our 12 Center City neighborhoods represent over 300,000 people who are in walking distance of this future connected line. This includes the countless jobs and more than 43,000 who have moved here along the line since 2010. And looking forward, we also know that there will be about 10,000 additional units of affordable housing that will be built along the alignment in the next 15 years. There are very few other transportation projects currently being planned that can seize on this number of potential riders. This is why in the recent Seattle Times poll, 66% of the residents of Seattle said we should be making it easier to get around downtown without a car. And 56% of people in King County favor completing the streetcar. This tells us that we need more options and we need the streetcar. No single transportation mode can meet our ever-changing needs of this city. We must diversify the transportation options of this city, and the streetcar is essential to a successful mix. We stand ready to partner with the council to make sure we have an accurate understanding of the project and the available funding sources. A significant amount of the updated project costs are associated with delay and necessary utility infrastructure improvements. We look forward to hearing more about the costs and budget assumptions during today's presentation. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with the council as this project moves forward.
Thank you, Emily. Anne's next, and Anne, you're going to be followed by Alice Lockhart and then Alex Hudson.
Hi, my name is Anne McCullough. I'm the Executive Director of the First Hill Improvement Association, and we are also a member organization of the Streetcar Coalition. First Hill is a rapidly growing neighborhood with 72% population increase projected in the next 5 years. In these coming years, First Hill will need a better transit access to adequately serve the neighborhood's growing population. First Hill is also a regional employment center with thousands of people either coming into the neighborhood for work, their health care needs, or education. A legible streetcar system is needed to keep people moving. The First Hill streetcar was built in lieu of a light rail station, and our dense neighborhood has been denied high-capacity transit twice. Our dense neighborhood should see transit options that match the land use, and a fully connected streetcar system would be a step in the right direction. First Hill has a higher-than-average elderly, disabled, and low-income population. Due to our neighborhood's topography and access to opportunity, a one-seat access to the greater downtown area would benefit people who need transit access the most. There are many long-term benefits to the completion of a legible and connected streetcar network in our quickly growing greater downtown area. We are appreciative of independent review and updated cost estimates, and we look forward to seeing the results soon. Please move forward with this multi-year process to deliver a well-connected streetcar system. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice?
Good afternoon. I'm Alice Lockhart, here today speaking about the Seattle Squeeze for the Mass Coalition as well as for 350 Seattle. And I forgot my glasses. As the Seattle Times article said, 90,000 cars just disappeared. Viadume wasn't so doomy after all. WSDOT removed a giant road, but at the same time, Metro doubled water taxi runs and added 20 buses, and SDOT added some bus lanes. And all transit agencies, as well as city leadership and the press, did a phenomenal job of publicizing the benefits of alternate commutes. And in response, we saw dramatically increased bike counts, water taxi use tripled, and we don't have the numbers yet, but more people on buses. All this is completely in keeping with the principle of induced demand. People will change their behavior to use available transportation infrastructure, whether it be a giant freeway or buses, bike lanes, and water taxis. Instead of road apocalypse, we saw that people are flexible and will use the infrastructure provided even on short notice. We saw a preview of Seattleites working together to prevent climate apocalypse that we know we'll see if we don't supply more viable carbon-free commutes. We learned that Seattle can bravely implement new bus lanes even at the expense of parking and travel lanes. Imagine how many cars we can get off the road if downtown commuters all know that they have fast and dedicated bus lanes and safe and complete bike routes to work, as well, of course, as the streetcar connections. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Alex? Alex, you're going to be followed by Lisa Howard and then Andrew Clapham.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Alex Hudson, and I'm the Executive Director of Transportation Choices Coalition, a statewide advocacy and policy organization that works to bring more and better transit options to people across Washington, and we are members of the Streetcar Coalition. We are supportive of the Center City Streetcar as it is an investment in resilient, sustainable future that connects our growing residential communities to jobs, culture, entertainment, and small and large businesses, and to the rest of the region. This project leverages existing investments and makes good on promises to the people and the communities, and creates thousands of good jobs in the transportation sector. Importantly, this moves us forward and where we need to be in equitably and appropriately allocating our limited right-of-way to move the most number of people sustainably and efficiently throughout our downtown. We stand with you in finding revenue solutions that work, prioritizing a clean climate, and connecting people to opportunity to create a safe and vibrant community.
Thank you, Alex. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Howard. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Pioneer Square, and we're also a member of the Seattle Streetcar Coalition. As many of you know, 2018 was a challenging year for Pioneer Square. The utility work on First Avenue was really hard. The ongoing delays made it even harder, and having multiple large construction projects impact us at one time was really hard. It impacted our small businesses, our upper floor office workers, our visitors, and our entire ecosystem. With that said, I'm sure you're wondering why I'm here today in support of completing the Center City Connector. I started working in Pioneer Square on behalf of Pioneer Square in 2008. One of my earliest memories of a meeting that I went to was actually a discussion of the need for a streetcar network. That need for an efficient, reliable network to connect Seattle's neighborhoods is still here today. In Pioneer Square, we believe strongly in creating a true network which will provide direct and easy access to our regional transit hub and will improve connections between the local and regional destinations like Pike Place Market, Seattle Center, and Pioneer Square. I am here because we believe this connection is critical to our continued revitalization of our district. The level of growth that Seattle is experiencing is challenging for our business district in a number of ways, as you're aware. The management and budget questions around this project are going to be challenging for us to figure out, but we can solve these issues together. We are committed to finding solutions to minimize construction impacts while completing these important projects. We know you're faced with difficult choices in your work, and please consider the long-term benefits to our transportation system, and not just our historic district, but also the neighborhoods around us. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you, Lisa. Andrew. Okay. Cliff Swiggett. And Cliff's going to be followed by Paige Malott, and finally Charles Finkel.
Hi, thanks for allowing me to speak today. My name is Cliff Swiggett. I'm also here with Sharon Victor and Elizabeth Burton, and we're members of the People for Climate Action, which is a relatively newly formed group with 150 members and growing, whose goal is to work with municipalities in King County to execute on climate action plans that were put in place. The overarching goals of these climate action plans that were adopted in 2013 and 2012 were to reduce carbon emissions, an issue that affects all of us deeply. And as a newly formed group, we're very talented. We have a lot of folks who are willing to help out. We really appreciate the council's leadership on this issue. And we are asking whether what makes most sense for us in terms of working with the council, who we might meet with, and how we might coordinate with Jessica Finkovan's office. And I just wanted to articulate more than anything that we're a bunch of folks here who really care about this issue deeply, as I'm sure everybody in this room does. And I've got a letter I'd like to leave behind to each of you. It's very short. It explains the organization, and it invites you to think about which one of you would be best for us to meet with and move forward on this issue. So can I leave this behind?
Yeah, if you want to hand those to Jesse, Cliff, that'd be
Will
great.
do.
And he'll
Thank you
distribute
very
them.
much.
Thanks for coming out, and I'm more than happy to meet with you as chair of this committee and also help facilitate a meeting with folks in the Office of Sustainability and Environment. There's a lot of work going on, and we can use a lot of help. So you can get in touch with me at mike.o'brien@seattle.gov, and happy to set something up. And I would encourage you to reach out to other council members too.
Thank you all very much. Thanks.
Paige?
My name is Paige Malott. I am a resident along the First Hill streetcar line and also a regular streetcar rider. I'm here today in support of the mayor's decision to resume the Center City Connector project. As you know, Seattle is in good standing to receive a small starts grant from the FTA for $75 million. If we do not get to construction, our city will not receive these funds. These are not funds that can simply be reallocated to other projects. We will just lose that money. Do we want to be a city that sends money back to our federal government, or do we want to be a city that follows through on our commitment to residents and businesses? By connecting the two existing streetcar lines along the First Avenue corridor, the streetcar will grow to serve more than 6 million passengers a year. That's more than the highest performing King County Metro bus route. At the end of the day, we have two existing streetcar lines that are not connected. This is a project that has the opportunity to improve passenger experience by connecting the South Lake Union and First Hill lines while serving 300,000 people. We are more than just a city that starts stuff. We are a city with a nationally recognized, award-winning public transit system. Let's build upon that reputation. Let's build the Center City Connector. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Charles?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First, a disclaimer. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Charles Finkel, and I have a business that would profit, like other businesses in our community, from having the First Avenue streetcar extant. And mine is the Pike Brewing Company right in the center of that.
I was going to ask what's in your bottle, Charles, but I hesitated.
But I come to you here not today as an expert in public transportation, but rather an expert in public. And for many, many years, I've served our community by helping people to explore and experience it in the best possible way. Because I personally have had the good fortune to do a lot of traveling all over the world. And in that regard, the thing that I'm interested in when I visit a place is what its history is. It's an essential to really enjoying the experience of going to a new place, no matter the beautiful views of Mount Rainier and Puget Sound. And maybe I should say as part and parcel of the nature of Mount Rainier and Puget Sound. And here in Seattle, two of the gems of historical museums in the world are at two ends of this proposed streetcar. That's the Wing Luke behind us here in the Chinatown International District, and the MOHI, the Museum of History and Industry, in the South Lake Union District. And I can tell you that as an expert in public and public direction, and as a concierge to let people know what amenities our city affords, it is much easier for me to say, all you have to do to go to the Wing Luke is get on the streetcar right in front, right on First Avenue, and get off at the, I don't know what exit it is, but I'd ask the guy standing next to me, hey, do you know the exit for the Wing Luke Museum? And they would give me that answer. And I'd get on the streetcar, instead of remembering, which bus do I take to get there? I'm not opposed to the bus system. I think by many standards, Seattle has a better transportation system this moment than they do. But having said that, we don't want to just be me too. We want to be world-class. And in world-class cities around the world, whether it's Tokyo or whether it's Beijing or whether it's Munich or Paris or London or New York, transportation is key to the success, not only of the community as a whole, but specifically those institutions that make it great, like the Wing Luke and the Museum of History and Industry. Can you imagine the benefit to them of having transportation that anyone, whether they live here or whether they are tourists, can experience? So I appeal to you to look at the streetcar as a cultural amenity to Seattle that we need as ASAP. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks for all you do for our community, too. That is the last person who signed up for public comment. Doug, would you like to speak? Is it just Doug that signed up on that one, Jesse?
Yeah, I may have signed the wrong list. One of the difficulties of being visually impaired is you can't read this stuff, and some of my comments have to do with the issues of disabled people in our community. What you are going to see today, I don't really want to talk about because I'm so dismayed by it that I'm concerned that I'll become ad hominem in my response, and I don't think that's constructive. I will say this is about the bike parking management memo and discussion that you're going to see. I've written, since I saw it on Friday, which is the first time it was made available to anybody, a 10-page outline of what the issues are that I've submitted to you, and I hope you'll get some kind of consideration to it. I do urge that what you've got from SDOT should not receive your certification, Mr. O'Brien. It's totally inadequate. That's a more complicated discussion than we're going to have in 90 more seconds, but I'll just make 2 points that I think really need to be understood. There is nowhere in the world any community that is doing floating bike share, anything like Seattle, and that's outlined in my memo and in other materials I've submitted. At some point, SDOT and the council and the city have got to ask yourselves the question, as against the interests of people who don't ride bicycles, how are we getting 20,000 bicycles on sidewalks in Seattle? There's been no rationale ever, and no place in the world offers any imposition and intrusion on sidewalks comparable to that. That's an issue that needs to be explored. The second issue is there is material in this presentation which is misleading, incomplete, and shallow. And I'll only point to one bullet. There is a bullet in this material that says sidewalks are a safe place for riding bikes. There is no bicycle education curriculum, no bicycle education organization, no leading national safety organization that supports that statement. And the thing that is so ironic about it is that it is not about the risk to pedestrians. Acknowledged everywhere in bike safety literature is how dangerous riding on sidewalks is to cyclists. The data is in Seattle. We had 50 crashes in 2017 from the most obvious of things that happen when you put bikes on sidewalks. People ride in crosswalks from sidewalk to sidewalk and they get whacked. That isn't even mentioned in this material. It's in the bicycle and pedestrian safety analysis, and it is in all the national literature. Not even mentioned. And you're going to put 20,000 more people, inexperienced, riding down the sidewalk, not allowed anywhere else in the country, in the business district, hardly, and then across the crosswalk into the most dangerous risk exposure that exists for most urban cyclists. And add to that, the second reason why bicycles aren't safe on sidewalks, particularly in the issue of 20,000 at a time, is because of sidewalk defects. It's in all the literature. We have 130,000 documented sidewalk defects in Seattle, over which we are now apparently going to grow a program which we never sized by any rational measure to what's going on anywhere else in the country. And we're going to put those 20,000 bikes against those 130,000 defects. And when somebody gets hurt, it's the city's liability and the cyclist injury. And then, if you want to look forward to what's happening elsewhere, where these devices are all over the sidewalk, I refer you to last week's Washington Post with a whole mounting discussion about the injuries to pedestrians tripping over things on the sidewalks from the e-mobility revolution. It's in the literature. And it's time this material got before the council and serious efforts were made to deal with the problem. SDOT was asked to provide a direct knowledge.
Just ask you to wrap up, Doug. You're a
And
little over.
Mr. O'Brien, they haven't done it.
I
We're
understood.
going to go to 20,000. You still have not seen your plan.
You. Gordon Padelford. And Gordon's the last one who's signed up.
Right. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Gordon Padelford. I'm with Seattle Neighborhood Greenways. First of all, thanks to Alice for speaking on behalf of the Mass Coalition. She did a fantastic job. I just want to repeat one thing she said, maybe for the shock jocks on the radio or the TV news, which is that we had the best January in Seattle history for biking, and biking was up 65% on 2nd Avenue. So people are demonstrating that they'd like to bike more, and we hope the city will follow through and complete the basic bike network to make it safe and comfortable and convenient to actually get around by bike, because there were a lot of people out there who were being really brave, and we need to make it really easy and comfortable for everyone to get around. Second, on walking issues, we don't have really great walking data, unfortunately. That's something we hope the city will start tracking and monitoring. We have this giant space-age room tracking all of the car traffic in Seattle and what the impacts are and adjusting things on the fly, but we have almost no information and certainly no real-time information on how many people are walking, what their concerns are, what sidewalks are clear, which ones are being blocked, and we need to do a much better job keeping sidewalks clear of construction, of ice, and as Doug said, of bike share bikes, but we think that the Department of Transportation is doing a really good job working with the bike share companies to keep the sidewalks clear in this new pilot from bike share bikes. So kudos to Joel and SDOT on setting us down the right path on that. Also, signals, a lot of the adaptive on-the-fly adjustments that are happening during the period of maximum constraint is focused on getting cars out to highways as quickly as possible, but we need to recognize that's having a real impact on people who are walking. 8% of people walk to work every day in downtown Seattle, and the department really needs to take a much closer look at what the experience and safety and comfort of those people is like during this time as well. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Gordon. That is the end of our public comment period. And so one of the presenters on agenda item come on forward. And Jesse, I'll ask you to read that item into the record if you can. And welcome my colleague, Councilmember Bagshaw. Thanks for joining us. And Councilmember Herbold, I don't believe I acknowledged you, so sorry about that. It's great to have you here.
Agenda item 1, Center City Connector Streetcar update, briefing and discussion.
As folks get settled, why don't we start with introductions? Calvin, do you mind going first?
Calvin Chow with Council Central Staff.
Ben Noble, the City Budget Director.
Karen Melanson, Deputy Director, Policy Programs at SDOT.
Chris Eilerman, Streetcar and Transit Corridors Manager, SDOT.
Eric Twite, Project Manager, SDOT.
Calvin, I don't know if you have anything to say to kick this off. Great. So appreciate you all being here today. The executive released some new information a couple weeks ago, and we thought it was important to have this opportunity for you to come present to this committee and for us to have a discussion about where we are in the timeline and you know, where the mayor's plans are moving forward. So I'll hand it off to whoever on the mayor's side wants to go first.
Right, thank you. Thanks for having us today. So as you said, we're here to talk about the Center City Streetcar project. The last time we were here was in March, SDOT and CBO together, and there were many questions about, at the time, about the information we were sharing and about cost estimates and schedule. So we're here today to share with you everything that we know today. We welcome your questions as we move along. So I'm going to start by looking at the timeline that got us to where we are today. I'm actually going to start a little bit before 2015 off the slide. So the Center City Connector project was originally included in the Transit Master Plan in 2012. In 2014, Council approved the locally preferred alternative, which selected the streetcar and its current alignment on First Avenue. In late 2017, Council passed the 2018 budget, which included resources for the project, the total project at a cost of $197 million. The mayor, as you know, the mayor paused the project in March of 2018 as a result of both reporting on operating estimate discrepancies between us and Metro, as well as SDOT identified capital shortfalls, including complications with a new streetcar vehicle that would be both heavier and longer than the current vehicles that operate today. Since that time, and under the direction of the mayor, the city has conducted an independent analysis conducted by KPMG on both capital and operating costs, as well as other issues, including the new streetcar vehicle. As a result of the KPMG analysis, SDOT undertook additional preliminary engineering work as a next step in further understanding how the new vehicles would operate on the streetcar lines, as well as cost implications. Additional engineering analysis looked at how to accommodate the new streetcar vehicles on both the existing lines in First Hill and South Lake Union, as well as the expanded system as connected by the Center City Connector project. The work looked at platform and tail track modifications, looked at modifications to the maintenance facility in South Lake Union to accommodate the cars, as well as bridge strengthening on Jackson Street between 2nd Ave Extension South and 5th Ave South, where there are 5 structures there. The estimate as it was developed is shown here is between an additional $11 million and $17.4 million. I do want to add that the work that was done was conceptual in nature, meaning it's very preliminary and will need to be further verified.
I would just add that if, for those who've tracked this, one of the specific recommendations from the KPMG analysis was, in fact, that we needed these numbers, that they'd taken a review of the cost data that we had, in large part verified the constructive cost estimates that were for the work that we'd set out, but identified that because of the issues around the cars, that there was a number of design potential engineering issues that needed to be addressed. So that was one of the benefits of this pause and of taking the time to dig back in, is to better understand what the potential costs are, really in this case understand what the engineering issues are that they in fact drive costs, but the engineering issues are essential. Obviously we need, if the system's going to work, these are modifications that are necessary.
Councilmember Bagshaw.
Thank you. Karen, when you talk about bridge strengthening here, is this, you said, is that the 4th and Jackson, the viaduct area that we keep hearing from Sound Transit? Their concern is, we don't have to answer this now, but could you put a bookmark and we can talk about it later? What could we do here that would support what ST3 is looking at, and whether or not, and we keep hearing gigantic numbers, like 10 times what you've got here for what it would cost to do the Jackson and 4th Avenue viaduct strengthening. So I'd love to come back and know what the facts are there.
Sure.
And just for public clarity, we've used the phrase bridge strengthening. I think that's technically, I'm not an engineer, I think that's technically what it is. But the issue here is that as you move from Pioneer Square to the ID, much of that roadway is actually elevated. It might not appear that way as you're walking or driving, but it is. And that's the engineering issue here that needs to be addressed.
Right.
Councilmember Herbold.
And again, each of these 3 items are solutions that have been identified to address the fact that the cars that were designed create some challenges. Can you speak to whether or not we are looking to the vendor to help recoup some of these additional costs?
Right. We are working with the vendor in terms of how we move forward with the vehicle. At this time, not only with this vendor, but based on the market research that we've done, a shorter and a lighter vehicle that is a hybrid, what we're looking for, is not likely.
Sure, but it seems to me an error was made. And I'm asking whether or not, if the fault for that error lies with the vendor, whether or not we are seeking to pay for these additional costs that we have because of this error from the vendor.
I understand. It's something that we'll work with them to negotiate as we move forward with the project. Okay. So turning now, looking at the capital cost estimates for the entire project. In 2015, again, the city estimated the project at $143 million. By 2017, this estimate was revised to include additional utility work as well as additional contingency as required by the FTA. In 2018, KPMG's review and analysis increased the project cost to $252 million. This increase was largely due to added scope, some of which we've discussed previously, contingency and escalation with an assumed delivery of 2022. The current city estimate builds on the KPMG work and adds in the additional engineering analysis, as well as escalation for construction with revenue service estimated to be in 2026.
But just to highlight that again, the KPMG estimate, one of the reasons that it is smaller is that we, as we were working with them, we had to decide in terms of their analysis what was a reasonable forecast for when the project would be delivered. And we, at the time, assumed 2022. We didn't know all of the issues around the other engineering aspects and the like. So they followed our direction. Since then, as we've better understood what the likely timeline is, we'd have to at least apply an escalation factor to their estimate. So just as you understand, some of this isn't that we sort of got it wrong, but rather that they made an assumption based on our direction at the time, and we've revised that since.
So essentially, we're between 2015 and 2019, the capital estimate is double.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Is it fair to say, Director Noble, that the SPU and City Light adjustments there relate almost exclusively to that escalation?
That's correct. Yeah.
So then, therefore, how much of that escalation, the difference of 28 million of SDOT's estimate could be counted as escalation, the change from 2022 to 2026? Is it the majority? It seems pretty simple for us to do a direct line escalation estimate between SPU and Seattle City Light costs, but not so much on the SDOT side.
I think we have a slide that's designed in part to give you a sense of exactly that question.
So the very next slide breaks out just the capital cost difference just for SDOT. So I think getting to your question between KPMG's estimate and where we are now. So looking at SDOT only, the difference between KPMG and SDOT, the majority of which is integration costs, the additional engineering work. The other categories, if you will, have more to do with escalation costs assumed with a later delivery of the system.
Sorry, can I just ask clarification? Maybe you clarified this, but I was because there are different numbers we're talking about here. So between what accounted for the difference between the 2015 city estimate and the 2019 city estimate, which, as Councilmember Bagshaw pointed out, it's roughly double. Was it utility or like?
Some of it is utility, yes.
But not all of it,
But not all of it. Right. So between 2015 and 2017, that has a lot to do with additional utility work, and the FDA required us to add additional contingency. So that's that first difference. Then when you go from 2017 to 2018, that's the work that KPMG did. Mm-hmm. So they're looking at additional scope due to the vehicles, additional contingency, and escalation again to 2022, which is what we had instructed them at the time. We then did additional engineering work looking specifically at the bridge structures and the maintenance facility, other issues with the cars that KPMG had highlighted for us. That was the slide previous, the 11 to 17 million. And we are also, after discussions with FTA, looking at revenue service in 2026. So we added additional contingency again.
So in this slide, Karen, the way that I read this is that, if you're going from design to startup along whatever axis that is, I always screw up the difference between the x-axis and the y-axis. I'm looking at you, Calvin Chow. I feel like you would know the answer to that question. Thank you. The x-axis. That for the most part, all of those differentiations between the blue and the gray bar really has a lot to do with escalation, with the exception of integration. And integration seems to get at Councilmember Herbold's earlier point, which is to say that a heavier car and a longer car is resulting in us needing to do modifications to our original design to better integrate those cars into the system. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Sorry, Eric.
Just the things like the design, the admin, those adjustments. The only difference there is the added design work associated with the integration. So it's not escalation in that case.
If we were really, to Councilmember Herbold's earlier point, if we were to go back and identify that a mistake was made by, let's pretend it was a third party, that for us, recouping those costs would look like the integration money, but it would also look like the delta difference in the $2 million of admin costs and the $1.5 million in design costs, that those two issues would also stay constant if it weren't for the integration costs that result from a heavier and longer car.
Yes, I mean, in terms of what we know about the KPMG estimates and things like that, that's the only differences, at least, that we've identified right now.
Eric, can you sing just a few more bars? And I'm sorry that I'm going a little deep on this, Councilmember Bryan. So then the SDOT construction difference here is really about the timeline between 2022 and 2026. And we just know materials are going to get more expensive over that 4-year period. That's what accounts for that $8 million difference?
Yes.
Okay, great.
This slide might also help provide a little clarity on the timeline and the changing numbers. Again, just looking at SDOT capital costs. As I mentioned, after further discussion with the FTA, our internal working schedule now assumes first full year of revenue service in 2026. This is partly due to the reviews that the FDA will conduct, as well as additional time needed for design and analysis for the added scope. As we move through further design and these estimates are updated, we'll keep you apprised of any changes. And I also want to note that these estimates do assume that we move forward with the current vehicles, as we're all discussing, and do not assume any costs associated with contract renegotiation.
So then I would talk a little bit about the resources that we have available and the resources that we have not yet to identify. So again, we've established, and I'm going to focus particularly on the SDOT, SDOT side here. We'll talk separately about utilities as well. Total SDOT cost, consistent with the previous slides, it's now estimated at $208 million, of which about $15 million has actually been expended already. That was principally in issues of design. The sources for that were some grants, direct local funding, and then some bonded funding. We had, as part of the Council's approval of the 2018 budget, identified sources for capital sources for an additional almost $68 million. Additional grants that would not have been the small starts grant. The parking tax, in part on a cash basis, so about $500,000, and then parking tax being issued, bonds being issued against future parking tax revenues for the bulk of the $45 million. We had identified then and or had expended just under $68 million, leaving a required total now of 140. We anticipate the small starts grant from the FTA at the $75 million that we have been planning on and have early indication of support for, and now need to revisit, leaving us a gap of $65 million on the capital side. As indicated in the communication from the mayor's office.
Ben, can you hold on one second? Councilmember Bold.
Thanks. I just have a couple questions about the identified budgeted funds not yet expended. So it looks like the CPT-backed bonds, we wouldn't be issuing them until 2020. But as it relates to the CPT and the non-small starts, are those funds that we are anticipating spending this year? And if so, can you talk a little bit about the purposes?
So the $500,000 is actually specifically approved in the budget. And I'm going to lean on the SDOT folks. The basic idea here is to continue work around design and engineering so that we can continue the conversations with the FTA over the course of this year.
And the 7.3?
The 7.3 is for, I believe, additional vehicle, is that correct? Vehicle design, right?
And expected to be spent this year?
Yeah, this year and following.
Thank you.
Yep.
What is the source of that?
The grant?
Yeah.
CMAQ.
CMAQ, okay. CMAQ, something air quality.
Congestion mitigation air quality project. And I believe that that's just an earned share fund distribution to us from PSRC based on our ridership. And I'm getting nods from the technical experts. So we get federal funds at the regional level. The streetcar gets its share of those regional funds based on ridership.
So we can talk also a little bit more about the revised timeline here. So when we originally put in the FTA grant, we had an aggressive timeline. It would have had us had the Center City Connector actually open at this point. But that became apparent certainly by 2017 that wasn't realistic. So we, based on the pause that the mayor ordered, and then the additional analysis that uncovered some significant issues, and again, as I indicated, that the pause provided that opportunity. We now expect that we wouldn't achieve full revenue service until 2026, and part of that has to do with the fact that the FTA will now want to do essentially not completely a de novo review, but they want to review the project again based upon the new information that we have about cost and the like. So the goal is to continue to work with them to help secure that $75 million grant, and again with the target of revenue service in 2026.
Chair?
Yes.
I think what you said was clear. I just want to underscore it just because of some comments I heard during public comment. These FTA funds are funds that we have not yet secured. We had in a previous fund cycle, but now we have to basically reapply. Is that more or less correct?
Right, we'll be reapplying. Of the 75 million, 50 million was allocated to the project, which is a significant step in the process. We don't have a signed grant agreement, which I think is partly what you're asking. So we'll be working with the FTA to get a signed grant agreement, but 50 million is allocated.
So 50 million is allocated. The 25 is the part that there's still a question about.
Right.
Okay. And this slide refers to full, the question of whether or not the city is required to demonstrate full funding. Is that something that the FTA would require?
They will require it at some point in the process.
But necessarily before
there's a signed grant agreement.
Before there's a signed grant agreement, not necessarily before an allocation decision is made.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And certainly as a budget director, I don't want to be presumptive about where the FTA will ultimately get to, and in their determination. But one of the things that we know and we don't think has changed is that the project, and today we're talking a lot about the cost and not so much about the ridership and the transit value, transportation value of the project. But one thing we know about the project is that, again, for now now a higher cost, but for in some sense a relatively smaller cost compared to many transit projects, by connecting two existing systems that are sort of struggling and operating in isolation and drawing that connection, you get a very significant ridership and a very significant benefit. Bottom line, again, we're not. The FTA will do their own analysis, but we do expect that the project will compete well on the small starts criteria.
Will they consider the fact that there is going to be a rail line at that same location? Will the consideration of that in any ways mitigate the value of the connecting of the two?
Talking about the light rail?
Yeah.
They'll look at the project as it's proposed. When we look at ridership projections, the model that's used takes into account factors like the light rail and other transit and development figures that are around. So it'll get involved that way, but they won't rate the project itself based on the light rail.
Yeah, I could see obviously why connecting two ends is of value, but it seems like the value of that might be lessened with coming light rail in the same location. So it's curious to me that they would not consider that, but I understand.
It may have the opposite effect too, with that network effect of now there's, potentially tens of thousands of riders every day getting off at a certain location with a connection to the streetcar too. But you would hope that one would at least attempt to model that, whether it's a positive or negative, do that.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. That's been an issue that has plagued us for a while, as the ridership numbers aren't anywhere near what we had projected even a decade ago. And if I were at Westlake and I want to go to Broadway, I'm going to get off and get on light rail because I'm going to get there in 5 minutes, as contrasted to the 20 it would take coming down through the connection and up Jackson and back up 12th. And I'm just wondering whether or not, how much that has been taken into consideration. And the same thing is true if I wanted to speedily get to, as the example I think the mayor used, to get to Wing Luke, it'd be faster for me to get off at Westlake and get on light rail, take me right to the International District Station. So, I mean, how do we make those determinations?
Mm-hmm. Want to talk about ridership?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So the ridership calculations that were done originally for the project go back to about 2014. They were based on a model prescribed by the FTA called the STOPS model, which at the time the model was run in 2014, accounted for conditions expected to be in the transit system as a whole in 2035. So that would have included things like East Link and Linwood and Northgate extensions of the Link system, as well as the existing Metro bus system. So we updated that ridership projection last fall with a recalibrated version of that STOPS model that accounted for current ridership on South Lake Union, which has declined slightly. It's down about 2% through November 2018 over 2017. So to try to account for current ridership trends on specifically the South Lake Union line, we recalibrated that model, reran the numbers, and came up with an average daily weekday ridership of about 18,000, which translated to, I believe, about 5.7 million on an annualized basis, which was less than the original 2014 projection, but still pretty high and in line with what KPMG had predicted as well.
I think as we, I really appreciate the back and forth here, and I think there's a lot more here to be teased out. And I think, you know, one of the things that I'm hoping for is I want to have a really transit-rich environment downtown. Frankly, more than just even what we're talking about. We're going to talk about later today about bike share and other things like that too. And so there is, you know, duplicate coverage in places. They're not identical. And really understanding how the, you know, I'm always concerned when I talk about the models because they're far from perfect, but really understanding what the impacts of making multiple different connections and giving people different options. And maybe on some days you decide, I want to take the two escalator rides downstairs to get on something and then reverse it at the other end, or I'll just hop on something on the street. It might be slower that way, but longer walk. But we do know that when people have lots of different options, that's a benefit. The question at what cost, and I think what's the cost-benefit trade-off is a really good one. And I think as we, you know, we're not making any decisions today, but as we continue to move through this process, it's going to be really important that we have the best data possible to understand both costs and ridership. And I think that's part of the frustration in the past is it feels like that hasn't been forthcoming in the past.
And that is why we are here today with just, I mean, we're focusing on cost because that's the information we have that's changed the most since the last time we talked to you, but our goal is to be entirely clear and transparent about the information we have so that you're in a position to make those decisions. But one of the things that we asked KPMG to do was to look at the ridership model, and they did a little bit of independent verification as well. And I think I certainly, I'm not a transit planner, I'm not guaranteeing you 5.7 million, but the very real sense is that there's a significant opportunity here to provide service, dedicated transit line on the west side of downtown, potential to serve the ferry terminal. Actually, one of the things that we were just chatting about internally is that the squeeze has highlighted the potential benefits of the West Seattle
water taxi, and it's going to drop people, if it does drop people at the southwest end of downtown, and they're going to need a way to move around. So just as an example of some of the opportunities that a dedicated transit line through downtown could offer. But agree that we need to be careful about the modeling because there is, you know, under a few blocks away underground, the transit line that moves quite quickly through downtown. Councilmember Johnson, and then
just a few brief points on this topic, and then a question. You know, I think one of the things that I think should get mentioned as part of our discussion is the fact that while our streetcar ridership in South Lake Union might be decreased slightly, overall transit ridership in South Lake Union has increased in no small part because of the other investments the city has made to split the C and D lines into two separate lines, and that has created a brand new way for a lot of folks to get to South Lake Union that couldn't access it on transit very easily before. So those folks were taking a bus ride and then transferring to the streetcar. So while we may have seen a decrease in ridership on the streetcar, we are seeing an increase in totality of ridership in South Lake Union. And as we contemplate what a potential streetcar might look like, there's also a lot of folks who aren't just talking about that West Seattle water taxi, but the potential advancement of a Lake Union water taxi system, a Lake Washington water taxi system. There's a lot of potential things that could go into incorporated ridership, given that we're still 5 or 6 years away from seeing the issue open. And then also, redundancy in the transportation system is a good thing. I think I just want to remind people of that we wouldn't say no to buses on 3rd Avenue because we've got buses in the tunnel, that we want buses on the tunnel, we want buses on 3rd Avenue, we want transit pathways all throughout the system because, as a reminder, the overwhelming majority of people come downtown every day on something like a bus. So the more we can have those redundancies, the better off our system moves. The final bullet point here mentions the FTA review time, but we don't give a specific timeline associated with that. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit about what we've heard from the FTA in terms of the review and when we might have an understanding, recognizing that the government shutdown has probably slowed us down some.
Sure, I can speak to that as well. So the FTA review time has been somewhat of a moving target, although based on the most recent feedback we've received and the recent shutdown notwithstanding, we're estimating a 12 to 18 month duration to get through the grant oversight process and get to either a letter of no prejudice that would enable us to start construction or a small starts grant agreement executed. Through that time frame, we will need to update our materials with FTA. We'll go through a number of pretty typical grant reviews that they engage in with an outside consultant, looking at scope, schedule, budget, et cetera, risk assessments, and so forth. So that's a typical process for the small starts, new starts process. We're giving ourselves about 1.5 years on the high end to get through that, but our hope is to be able to work with FTA to shorten that.
And did that clock start when KPMG finished their work, or does that clock start now when we finished our review of KPMG's work?
That clock would start when we re-engage with FTA on the project to move forward. So now, I guess.
Soon.
Yeah.
Did you have comment? Yeah, council members, I just wanted to make one comment. A lot of you have mentioned the network effect. I mean, one other thing that will come up, I think, later in this presentation is the financial impact of owning just a portion of a network. These are largely, the more network we have, the more we assume transfers, and the more that actually dilutes some of the revenue pool. So it has a different impact potentially on the finances of the system separate from the ridership or how that all works together. So I just think that it's useful for us to remember that some of those financial indicators may go separately from how the ridership or the overall transportation benefit of a project might not necessarily be captured in the finances of that, partly because of how we operate these things and how we've got the ownership split up.
That's great.
So the next slide you see here is just a snapshot of the existing First Hill and South Lake Union system without the extension, without the Center City Connector project included. Really the key takeaway from this slide is that going forth, we will have a subsidy that is required to be filled for the continued operation of the system as it stands today. And so this is a pretty conservative approach. It accounts for the $5 million contributions from Sound Transit and the $1.5 million contribution from King County, and when those go away. But this is based on our most recent budget projections for First Hill and South Lake Union, as you've seen most recently in the semi-annual streetcar report.
As budget director, I want to take a moment to make sure to walk you through this and some of its implications. And again, we're only talking here First Hill and South Lake Union. We're actually not talking City Connector, but Center City Connector. But you need obviously that context. So currently, for 2019, the budget you approved provides just over $4 million in what we've called subsidies. So that's coming from transportation resources. For 2020, that budget anticipates a little bit more than that, just about $6 million. Part of that is because of increased operating cost, about $500,000 of it, but $1.5 million of it represents the potential loss of subsidy that is coming from Metro. And we have been conservative in the budget in assuming that we will lose those funds. I think there's every reason that we haven't conceded the point in a negotiation context and shouldn't, in my opinion. I was around when we opened the South Lake Union Streetcar, and part of the negotiation about the hours and the additional subsidy for Metro had to do with the way routes were reconfigured in Southeast Seattle with the opening of light rail. So it was essentially a city working with Metro to shift service from one area to another. So I would argue we have some level of entitlement there. But we have been conservative on a budget side. That takes you roughly through 2023. Again, costs continue to increase, so that the subsidy increases somewhat year to year. Ideally, again, with the continued subsidy for Metro, those numbers would be about $1.5 million lower. 2024, different situation. What happens then is that the current $5 million annual subsidy from Sound Transit, we have assumed that it ends. We do not have a written agreement for them for that subsidy past 2023. And we, on the financial side, we can imagine plugging this hole on a one-time basis for 2024, and our financial planning does that, but we do not have a long-term financial solution for losing that roughly $5 million operating subsidy. So again, this is not an argument for or against C3, it is just understanding that there's, in the city's future, a potential for an additional $5 million that's needed just to operate the two systems as they stand now.
Yes. Thank you. So the required city subsidy in 2019 is financed with, I believe it's street use fees and CPT, commercial parking tax?
Commercial parking tax.
Is that the case also for 2020?
2020, I think we then begin to blend in a couple fund sources. There might be street use fees, commercial parking tax again, and a few other things to make it up, and that continues through 2024.
And that does continue? So
yeah, there's a blend of transportation.
There's a sufficient amount in order to cover those costs even when they go up in 2024?
Right, through 2024.
Okay. Yeah, we use 6-year financial plans, so we've plotted it out that far. But again, we have not plotted out a sustainable source past 2024 for the loss of the SG subsidy. I'm not saying I'm obviously in a situation we would have to, but just to be clear about the challenges that lie ahead.
So if I can just pile on that just a little bit. I know, Ben, you and I had talked about during our last budget about what the implications would be for an unfunded operating gap like this. And if we looked at it down the road, just five years down the road, we're looking at $60 million that our budget, that the general fund is going to have to figure out a way to fund. And I think of $60 million worth of public transit, and what else could that buy? So I'm hopeful as we go through this that we can be doing some comparisons as well. You know, I voted for this streetcar multiple times up until now, and I'm really concerned about what I'm perceiving as a huge overrun in these construction costs, as well as an unfunded gap there for the operating fees. So I'm hopeful that if we go forward here, that we'll be able to get some more information from SDOT about how we're going to deal with those.
Again, I'm not the transit planner in the room, if you will, but just to understand this specifically, this is a subsidy that's related to the First Hill streetcar exclusively, and we don't have the presentation here, but we'll highlight. I mean, that's one where ridership is robust and growing. So on the face of it, is providing important and meaningful transit service. It was designed specifically to connect light rail from the ID, Downtown ID, to First Hill, because Sound Transit didn't build a First Hill stop. Again, with light rail to the east and to the south, the opportunity for those transfers to and that connection are only going to be growing. So again, this is a reason we should have this conversation with Sound Transit as well, because this is an asset that they invested in lieu of others. But my point being is that it's a great deal of money, but there's also significant transit benefit, and I would argue particularly on the First Hill side.
And again, the data we're looking at is First Hill and South Lake Union. These are the existing operations and the gaps we have in that.
Correct.
Councilmember Johnson?
And I would just say, you know, I think about this slightly differently than the word subsidy, Director Noble. For me, this is about an investment in infrastructure that our citizens support. So when we get presentations from the department about the ways that we spend the Seattle Transportation Benefit District money, for example, and the bus service that we buy, we don't call that a subsidy of King County Metro bus service. We call that an investment in additional ridership and additional options for our riders. And we also don't necessarily set minimum fare box recovery goals and objectives for the investments that we are making with King County Metro and expansion of that that important service to a lot of our constituents. So for me, I think that the partnership that you outlined between the funding blends of King County, Sound Transit, and the city are important, not just on this project, but on a whole host of other projects. So I would just really encourage us to think about this as an apples to apples conversation. I think the way you've outlined in this chart, I think is an important illustration of the way that we can be fiscally conservative, but I think it also shortchanges that there are a lot of other opportunities where we partner with those other agencies too, and we don't necessarily call them out as subsidies in that way. And so I want us to make sure that when we enter into sort of a final set of discussions about how we're going to pay for both the operations and capital side of the Center City Streetcar, that we're talking about it on an apples-to-apples basis.
And I'll just add that expanding it broadly to the entire transportation network, when we talk about roads, we don't talk about fare box recovery either, because we don't have a fare box there, but they're heavily subsidized. And so these are all really important questions, because there are costs associated with running all pieces of the transportation network. And for us to understand what those actual costs are, both capital costs and operating costs, what the benefit we get, how it mixes in with the other sets of investments we made, how the complexity around it may take away from other investments, operating. So all that stuff is complex information, but stuff that we can at least make some projections on. And if there's ongoing transparency, it'll really help us be making some policy decisions moving forward.
Thank you.
So moving on to the operating cost with the Center City Connector project. This represents our best estimate to date of what that estimated operating cost would be for an expanded system, including the Center City Connector operated as called for under the original operating plan. So if you'll recall, there were sort of two overlapping loops independently operated on the Center City Connector plan. What we're showing in the first year of operations is about a little under $28 million in operating costs. That's based on estimates we've received from Metro. We've been through that with them, kind of crawling into some of those details and understanding better what's behind them. It's based on that operating plan, Metro's scheduling effort to staff that appropriately, and the size of the system and the needs that they believe that they would have to operate that, including SDOT direct costs, traction power, and so forth. What we're looking at in terms of estimated annual ridership, you'll see at the bottom below the required city subsidy, as it's listed on here, is about 7.1 million. That's escalated from the updated ridership, the recalibrated ridership model that I mentioned earlier. That's escalated to a 2025 start date. So about 7.1 million is the annual estimated ridership in that first year, 2025. Of course, that goes on to second year operations, 2026 at about 7.4 million.
Can I ask a question about this? A near doubling of the operating costs when we're bringing on a line that is effectively only adding about 1/3 of the space between those two existing lines feels like a lot. I assume that near doubling of the operating costs has to do, Chris, with your description of having effectively two lines that kind of have an overlap associated with it. And am I correct in assuming that if we ran a different operating model, let's say an end-to-end model, that we might bring some of those costs down from the $27 million number that we've got in front of us?
Yeah, so this estimate reflects, as I mentioned, the original operating plan, which would take the fleet that we're operating now in the peak hour, which is 8 cars between the South Lake Union and First Hill lines, to 14. So a significant increase in both the number of vehicles that would be operating during the peak, an extension of the peak hour beyond what we're operating now on the two disconnected lines, resulting in a significant increase in operating costs for both operators, for vehicle maintenance. We have because we've extended the peak hour and extended the hours of service somewhat, we also reduced the maintenance window So that the amount of time that we have to work on the cars, the bigger fleet, in turn generates some increase in maintenance staff that would be necessary to perform those tasks. And then because of the overlapping loop dynamic, there is, I think, some increased oversight in terms of control and dispatch that would be necessary to make sure that we're keeping cars spaced appropriately and making sure that the railroad is essentially running smoothly. We have had some discussions with Metro about what we call the single loop option, which would be an end-to-end operation instead of the two overlapping lines. There are some potential benefits both for users in terms of not having a transfer somewhere along First Avenue or so somewhere on the overlapping portion, and some potential savings as far as the operations cost. And so we're going to continue to explore that option as we go forward. As we make decisions about the design and engineering for the project going forward, we'll have to come to some conclusion about that and make some assumptions about which operating plan will be implemented. And that in turn could impact some of the civil decisions that we make. And so if there's an opportunity to do any kind of value engineering based on that operating plan decision, we'll be exploring that as well.
Well, I look forward to seeing the pencil get sharpened a little bit on this end. And I would also say that we're not the only ones that are purchasing operating hours from King County Metro. Sound Transit's doing a lot of that as well. And I think that there's a real intersectional interest between our two agencies at that point, because we're not just paying the drivers and their attendant benefits, we also pay a pretty healthy overhead cost on top of that. So as we continue those negotiations with Metro, I think it might be interesting for us to partner together with Sound Transit as a package of negotiations on what we could really get if we all banded together. Maybe there's an opportunity for efficiencies of scale there. So I look forward to seeing the pencils get sharpened a little bit.
And I just want to highlight, just flipping between the previous slide and this one, part of it was to make the point that I was laying the groundwork for earlier, is that the subsidy for First Hill and South Lake Union in 2024, or the annual city investment, Councilmember, is just under $13 million. If we connect them and run C3 on an estimated basis, the annual city investment for operations is about 18 or 19. So it's about a $5 or $6 million increment associated with C3 itself, the City Connector. I just wanted to emphasize that point. That I sort of think about this as three $5 to $6 million pots. There's the one that's required now. There's the one that emerges if Sound Transit, if our arrangement with Sound Transit isn't continued, and then there's the operation of C3 itself. And the math works out sort of simply. That's about a third. But I think that gives you a good feel for what's happening on the operating side.
Am I just taking the 12.8 on the previous page? And
correct.
Yeah.
Because the first year of operations is 2025 or 2026. So that's exactly what I was trying to do there.
6 million or so. Okay.
Great. Couple more slides.
So again, the mayor is enthusiastic about moving this project forward, recognizing that it is a significant transit investment through downtown. I mean, I sort of think of the hourglass of downtown. But as we consider what the funding options are, that work will be done in the context of recognizing that there are other funding needs for transportation and a number of significant investments that are ongoing right now. And this is just to highlight, to recognize that any investment here, and you know this well, needs to be made in that context. So on the Move Seattle side, funding shortfalls relative to some initial commitments that we are working through now. We've called out the Seattle, the Center City Connector. And then on Sound Transit, the discussions with Sound Transit have begun around the question of potential third-party funding support for that overall work, including work here in the city. The scale of that project is well, it's unique as well as very large. So potential contributions from the city could be significant. Again, and the issues there will be us guiding and working with Sound Transit on the specific routes and designs and choices about elevated and surface and subterranean and the like. So this was just to give you a sense of the things that are under consideration as we look at C3 itself.
Two things that I'm interested in. One is the east-west corridor up Madison, how that might relate to and whether you've included that in this multimodal corridor improvement, the gap that we need. And the other is You know, First Avenue, when we first looked at just tying the loop for the Center City Streetcar, nobody was talking about the Seattle Center Arena. It wasn't even in a twinkle in anybody's eye at that point. We know that it's going to be 15 to 17 years before we actually get light rail from downtown to Seattle Center. I'm really interested in how we're going to move people to and from in those 15 years. And I would be interested, and my colleagues in Belltown have been asking for, once again, some First Avenue connector that goes all the way, and I'm thinking Mercer to Lander, if you'll bear with me on this. So is it possible, as we're thinking about what do we really need to get people moving and around downtown, is there a way that we could consider what the cost would be? And I know extending it is a ridiculous thing right now, but if we did something like the Madison BRT up First Avenue, and again, I'm talking between Lander and Mercer, that is mostly just a shuttle moving people from one end to the other, if there's a way that we could incorporate that on dedicated lanes. I mean, that's another thing that I want to make sure we're talking about here on the streetcar. If they're not dedicated to streetcar, they're going to get stuck in traffic. If they're stuck in traffic, they're almost useless as far as moving people quickly.
Right. So to your first question on the Transit Plus multimodal corridor improvements, the shortfall that's shown there, provided that the Madison multimodal project receives the FTA Small Start grant that it has application in for, that project itself is fully funded. This represents segments and pieces of other corridors that were planned for which to do kind of a more full or broad scope of that corridor would require additional resources. I don't have that list in front of me, but if you're interested, I'm happy to provide it. On your second question, which is there a way to, I think in the more near term, provide some sort of connection between Lander or Mercer? We have had conversations with Metro and have looked at a shuttle service, if you will, along that line. As you know, Metro, while we're all interested in providing transit service, has its own, due to the increased demand for transit service, has its own issues with capacity and base constraints. And I know it's a conversation we had a lot with the mayor as well around, is there another way to service that line? And I think it's something we'll continue to talk about, but right now we don't have a plan with Metro to provide something like a BRT or a shuttle.
I would hope that as we're continuing to look at this and thinking about the costs and the 1.7 mile to connect one to another. And I really appreciate what Councilmember Johnson was talking about, is redundancy is a very good thing. And there isn't a single one of us here at the table that doesn't want to see more transit and making it easier for people to move around. Really, the question is, for me, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Right.
Thank you. So for this slide, it's hard for me to figure out which numbers to add up here. If a decision was made to not pursue the Center City Streetcar, it's helpful to know about how to think of this slide, about how many dollars would be available to do one of these things that aren't a streetcar. And I don't, am I adding the 65 million capital shortfall, and that we, in theory, would have, if we were doing the streetcar, we would have to come up with, and the 45 million in CPT, and maybe some of, for purposes of a one-time capital investment, 1 year of the operating costs subsidy or investment?
Yeah, I mean, you could. I'd want to get you a more precise answer because I need to think about the resources that have been expended, although that's highlighted on the slides as well. But as you point out, the shortfall we have right now is 65, but we have effectively budgeted against our bonding source about 45 million, right? So those
45 out of those 60.
No, that's in addition. So
in addition,
60,
yeah.
And I want to be very clear about this. We have built the budget. You have not spent the money. We have not spent the money for the original cost of this. So the shortfall on the capital side for SDOT is 65 million. So if we did not do the project, we wouldn't spend that 65 million. But then we also wouldn't spend the base, if you will, either. So there is again.
You understand the exercise. I'm interested in pursuing.
Absolutely understand it. Yes. And then you have to think about if the annual operational investment
that we have to do anyhow.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have, we have not identified what the source would be. And again, we haven't brought you forward a proposal for the $65 million shortfall either. I mean, the one thing we know for sure is the 45 plus a little bit that we have otherwise budgeted on a planning basis for the next 6 years.
And then the other question that I have is, does relate to the question of the benefits of redundancies. I would be interested to know, because there has been this question of whether or not a streetcar is a truly transit infrastructure, or if it's more of an economic development tool. And so I'd be interested to know whether or not this question of redundancies has been studied specifically with streetcar lines that overlap with other types of transit. That's something I'd be interested in finding out more about at a later date.
Calvin, did you have a point you wanted to add to that?
I think Ben got to it, but the idea that the 65 million has not been identified, so it isn't actual resources. Currently in the budget, there's 45 million that has been identified, and that could be reallocated.
Yeah, and I guess conceptually, I'm thinking, if there is a plan to fill the shortfall, and there is a decision made to not pursue the streetcar, then we could potentially, assuming that the plan to fill the shortfall was with general transportation dollars, we could shift that plan to one of these other things.
If there's a funding proposal.
Yes. I also just want to add one piece that while there is the base, the 45 million in commercial parking tax that's been allocated to the streetcar, that if we did not continue the project and we terminated the project, there are costs associated with terminating the current contracts that we have. So I just wanted to make sure folks are aware.
I think the questions you're asking, Councilmember Herbold, are important ones, and as we move forward, we want to understand, clearly there's some sunk costs in this. We may not be able to pinpoint all of those, but to get an estimate of if we weren't to go forward, how much capital will be freed up for other investments, and then knowing what the additional investments are to go forward, which I think is pretty clear at this moment. It's a 65 million, but trying to understand the benefit of that.
Karen's point that there are some sunk costs that would have to be acknowledged as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also, I think, Councilmember Herbold, you bring up an important point. It's also, we have to look at the opportunity costs associated with any additional money that we spend, and that's different. That's a different kind of calculation than the sunk costs, because I think that needs a broader conversation. Also, just along the lines of what Councilmember Herbold and Bagshaw have been bringing up, and I really appreciated, Councilmember Bagshaw, your example of if you were going from Westlake to Broadway, there's just looking at real life sort of examples and seeing what kind of utility are we getting. I think those are important questions to be asking along the way. And I also wanted to point out that, it's obviously a fact that now that the FTA grant is here, it can't be used for anything else, and public comment was correct about that factually. But we also, and this can't be undone now, but just also to remember that it could have been a grant for something else, and it's nothing for the future. We should be thinking about it in those, there's nothing compelling us to do this, but this is done now, and there are some costs. But it is a question of what is the biggest bang for the buck in terms of transit infrastructure, or as you said, the juice and the squeeze. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also wanted to say that I would also be interested in looking at the transit infrastructure on the one hand, the streetcar as an economic development tool as the other, and if there's anything we can look at that.
And I also just want to highlight the fact that 4 of us around this table are members of the Sound Transit 3 elected leadership group, and we are going to be charged with identifying third-party funding for the preferred alternative. And so that's one of the things I'm going to be looking at, and I'm hoping my colleagues on the elected leadership group do as well.
And that's the up to $1.6 billion that you flagged there is a rough estimate of where we are in that process.
But I imagine it's going to be third and fourth and fifth party funding that is going to be necessary to make it happen.
Excellent.
Yeah, to be clear, this is not an offer from the budget director to find $1.6 billion, but just a recognition, this is the opportunity cost. slide, if you will, recognizing that there are other demands out there and worthwhile projects.
Councilmember Johnson?
I recognize that I've spent a lot of oxygen at this meeting today, so I'm grateful for your discretion, Mr. Chair, and we're now half an hour over time. But, I would be remiss if I didn't reflect on the last time that we had a major snowstorm in this city, 2008. You and I were both wrapping up a process that identified an alternative to what is just been opened. And as part of that process, we had asked for and we'd received a commitment from the state to receive $100 million for the city to construct a waterfront or First Avenue streetcar, and a commitment to have the state legislature adopt a 1% motor vehicle excise tax to fund transit service. That first commitment never materialized. And the second commitment we got passed by the legislature and got vetoed by the governor. So this conversation, you'll forgive me, has been going on for a very long time. And it's an issue that I feel very passionate about because so many commitments have been made to get this project done and been walked back from, starting with those first conversations all the way back in 2007 and 2008. That I appreciate the difficulty that the staff is in trying to be very transparent with us about what the costs associated with this revision has been. But I reflect on that moment in 2008 where we had $100 million and a project that we thought was going to be about $75 million, and we never received those dollars, and so therefore the project could never get built. And here we are, 11 years later, in a very different scenario, having the same hard conversations. And so, as folks in Olympia who never watched this briefing, but if the words from my mouth can reach Olympia's ears as they contemplate a transportation revenue package in Olympia, I would urge you to remember those promises that you made to us more than a decade ago and ask you to fulfill those promises. And I have to walk away now because I'm so mad.
As oxygen well used. Rebecca.
Thank you, and I'm going to step out as well, but I want to acknowledge SDOT, and thank you. Heather Marks, I know you're hiding back there, but thank you for the work that all of you have done for the last 3 weeks in particular. I mean, talk about juices and squeezes. We survived that quite nicely, and I really want to acknowledge and say thank you for the good work you've done. And thank you for this presentation. I know I'm sounding really grumpy about where we're going to get the capital and the operating costs, but as I mentioned before, my goal is to be able to move people around the city, people and goods, and do it in a way that is as cost effective as we possibly can. So blessings on you all for all your good work.
So before we wrap up here, there's one final slide on next steps, and I think it's important for us to walk through that. Ben, do you want to?
Happy to do it. It's a brief slide, so I like that. As we indicated, and I'll just cut to the chase here, that there's $500,000 in the 2019 budget that council approved for us to continue essentially design and engineering work. Very clearly a proviso that the monies are not to be used for construction, and we're not there anyway. That said, as we continue conversations with FTA and given the direction from the mayor, in order to keep the project moving forward to some degree, we anticipate that we'll need some additional funding beyond that $500,000. And I cannot tell you exactly how much that is right now. So as we continue to refine our work, we will come back to you with a proposal and a request potentially for some, I anticipate a request for some additional funding as we continue to try to keep this option viable and moving forward.
And so to be clear, that's not construction money, but it'd be additional design and planning work. To keep the city's process moving in parallel with the FTA review, to keep this timeline? Is that essentially?
It's exactly. It's the FTA, we want to keep moving through the FTA process and being able to address their questions and also to provide them the basic information that they require.
Got it. So it's not that the application is sitting on their desk and we have nothing to do. There's a fair amount of back and forth that would happen in the next 12 to 18 months. Okay. Councilmember Herbold?
Yeah, so when that request for additional funding comes forward, are you anticipating to be able to provide more detail on a funding plan for operations and construction at that point?
To be able to provide additional detail, because we are providing relatively little now. I don't know that we are in a position of saying this is absolutely the solution, depending on where we get. That might require some more work, in particular some more work with you, but recognizing that if we're going to ask for additional investment, additional work on exploring what the realistic funding opportunities are, I think is appropriate and reasonable.
I remember during the budget process, we, I think, included an amendment that required a funding plan before construction. In retrospect, I wish we had created a different benchmark for that requirement.
I understand the desired benchmark. Again, the budget guy, certainty is on the financial side is certainly something that I value. Just what I don't know is even the timeline of the FTA work, nor candidly the scale of the ask. So it feels to me like that should be part of this calculus as well. But we need to be working hard at thinking about and have done starting to do some work about what are the funding options, what could make this work, and how does it, per the slide previous, how does it fit into the other demands or needs rather that we collectively see.
So, Calvin, can you help me think through what our next steps are? We're not making any decisions today. As mentioned, there's an allocation in the existing budget for $500,000, but also a proviso that doesn't allow me to spend on construction, which is a few years out, so that's not really relevant at the moment. And what we're hearing is that the $500,000 is unlikely to be enough. We'll probably need additional some point this year to continue through design process to see even where we are with the feds. What thoughts on how the council might move forward on that?
I think we just have to wait for an executive proposal on that, and then again, you'll have a chance to take this up again in budget this year. But without a funding proposal in front of you, it's going to be difficult to have too much of a conversation.
Okay. So, Ben, timing on that? Do you have a sense?
Months, not weeks, but I mean, my guess is mid-year, by mid-year.
Okay.
Just to counter what your thinking is about this, I would feel more comfortable if we were able to express our expectations, if we have some shared expectations in advance of receiving a funding proposal from the executive. And I don't quite know how we would do that. I think we would need to have a little bit more information before something got baked in advance of something being sent down to us.
So you definitely heard a lot of questions today, and I think what I would suggest is give you all a chance to sit on that, reflect on that, and maybe we can work with Calvin to see if we want to formalize some of that. I believe some of the questions we asked today are things that you can all probably sharpen pencils and come back with some modeling. Some of the questions are probably we're not sure and probably won't know for a couple of years what that looks like. And so I would like to help us as a council move with as much information towards this next decision point. But I also want to acknowledge that we're going to get to a decision point likely in the next few months, and we will still be speculating on what some outcomes are because we're in the middle of a process. And so maybe what I'll suggest is I'll work with colleagues individually and with Calvin to have you spearhead this to put forward in writing some of the things we'd like to see. And maybe get a response on what you all think that, we'll start with maybe the universe of things we talked about today and get a response of like, here's some things we think we can reasonably get you some estimates on in the next few months in anticipation of this additional funding request, and then some clarity about what's not, and so that we can start to get our head around what gray areas we're gonna have to deal with as we make a decision.
And again, the point of this briefing that brought us coming in here is transparency about the information we have and don't have. So look forward to having that conversation and recognize the concerns.
And so council members, if we're talking something at mid-year, if it's appropriate, I'm happy to do something in the committee, between now and then to maybe have another discussion and update, just so we don't surprise each other with when a request comes, just to see where we are with any updates we have. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate that. Colleagues, that presentation went a lot longer, and I chose not to rein that in because I think it's a pretty important conversation to have. I'll invite presenters forward for the next item. Can I probably ask that the presentation on the Seattle Squeeze, will condense that as much as possible. And we have another important discussion and a council bill to consider, so we're probably going to go beyond a little beyond 4 o'clock today. But we'll do our best to try to get back on track as much as I can.
And I'm going to leave, and I'm sorry for leaving when I was a contributor to everything going on.
No problem. It was great to have you here, Councilmember Herbold, so thanks for being part of that discussion. I'll read agenda item number 2, briefing on period of maximum constraint or Seattle squeeze. And got some introductions to do in a moment here. General Warden, if you would like to start by introducing yourself, and we'll go down the row.
I'm Mike Warden. I'm the new Director of Citywide Mobility Ops Coordination.
I'm Heather Marks. I am the Director of Downtown Mobility at your Seattle Department of Transportation.
And Steve Herjack. I'm the Assistant Chief of Special Operations.
Welcome, everyone. It's your first time at the committee table, Mr. Warden, so thank you for being here. And you were hired to make the last 3 weeks run smoothly, and I think you did a decent job with that. So, yeah, I think you started on the day it started, so I won't give you too much credit, but appreciate to hear what you've learned in the process and tell us of what we learned today. And I will try to move through this rather quickly to touch on the high points, and if there's some more information we want to share, we may come back to committee in a month or so.
Sure. No, that's fine. I'll begin, and I'll be followed just down the line here.
Great.
And I'll wrap up at the end. First of all, I need to express how honored I am to work for the mayor and her team to serve the city. Everybody knows here that Seattle's one of the most rapidly growing cities in America, and that comes with rapid population growth and then a lot of construction, and that equals a congestion challenge, right? And it's peculiar here in Seattle because we're constrained by some bodies of water that forces a sort of a densification of the efforts that are ongoing. And when that occurs, it's going to be very challenging to ensure that the flow of people and goods in and around those areas continues. It's necessary for a dynamic city. I think the mayor saw the enormity and the unprecedented challenge and complexity and the rapid pace of change in this city. And as a result, I think someone coined the phrase Seattle squeeze to depict that change that was ongoing for several years and the challenges to mobility it would have. So she hired someone to coordinate the efforts of all 29 departments in this city to be better able to navigate through the squeeze and sustain that level of effort. So I support each department director in the achievement of that challenging mobility goal. And that's my job. I'm also obliged to continue the momentum that's been established here in terms of building relationships in the region and state. And it's a great foundation. My job is to make it only stronger. And then being new to Seattle, I just have to comment very briefly. What's impressed me is the consistency to which the people of Seattle vote to fund major transportation improvement initiatives. Well, they deserve a strong team that has unity of effort, both at the city level and at the region level. Now I'll turn it over to Heather Marks, who's been in the middle of all this. That's great.
So just quickly, we'll roll through some of the strategies that we've had, the status of where we are, some of the takeaways that we've achieved here in the past couple of days, what the new normal is going to look like. Then we'll roll into enforcement and prevention. My partner, Steve Herjack, will speak to that, and then we'll roll back to Mr. Warden to discuss citywide coordination and some next steps. So I've been here before to talk to you about this. As you know, we have developed 5 pillars to organize our thinking and our efforts. We are monitoring and managing our transportation system to ensure that it works as well as it can. Through the good graces of the Seattle voters and the Seattle Transportation Benefit District, we're investing in transit and expanding access. In addition, we're working to reduce the number of drive-alone trips downtown and managing the public right-of-way as we have never managed it before. In addition, we are partnering with our regional transportation agency partners to have a unified and coherent communication platform for the people of the region. So the good news is the tunnel is open. We opened the tunnel. The Battery Street Tunnel is closed forever, and Harrison Street, for the first time in 60 years, you can cross Aurora at Harrison Street. So we have made some spectacular progress in just the past couple of days. Yet to come, we're going to open the South Dearborn off-ramp. That's going to help the commute for West Seattle and Southwest commuters. That is scheduled to open on February 11th, but we have some challenging weather, and so that may shift a little tiny bit depending on their ability to pour some concrete. Demolition starts on February 12th. I can hardly believe that we are at the point where we're going to demolish the viaduct, and we are going to start connecting those north surface streets of John and Thomas also on February 12th. As somebody who's been working in and around this project for almost my entire career, it gives me just a great deal of pleasure to be able to say these things to you today.
That's great.
So overall, it went honestly just about as well as I think we could have expected. The peak period skewed about an hour early, which means that people were listening to what we asked them to do, which is flex their commuting times. We really didn't have any chronic increases in either volume congestion or delay. There was no persistent gridlock. Weather and incidents impacted the tough times that we did have, but the good weather, behavior change, and the communications that we engaged in really led to some stable traffic. Transit, travel times, and congestion were stable. Ridership was stable. We're going to be able to present you with some more specific data on that a little later. We have to have Metro's data reporting catch up with us. And then the water taxi ridership, though, was as much as triple, so it was really a great choice for us.
So on that, on the transit ridership, what we've heard is that the data reporting for King County is lags a little bit, which I understand. Is this bullet point like some anecdotal stuff that it looks like the transit ridership didn't go up significantly?
It's a little bit more than anecdotal, but not much. They have a big system, and they have a pretty complicated and rigorous system for collecting their data because they feed it into the federal transit database. But they picked some proxy routes, and we have about 2 weeks worth of data. So we have data from the first week and the second week. We're waiting for the third week. And so soon we'll be able to state a little bit more definitively. I do want to note, though, that transit doesn't just mean buses. The water taxi is certainly transit, as well as light rail and the heavy rail that brings folks in. I've never been so happy to be so wrong. Bicycle counts on 2nd Avenue, the Fremont Bridge, and the Lower Spokane Street Bridge were spectacularly higher than in January of 2018, and so we were all very pleased to see that. That's clearly going to be a lot bigger part of the message as we go forward. I think the mayor making the decision to expand bike share certainly fed into that, and we saw greater ridership on bike share bicycles than we saw January last. And then the work that we did to complete the 2nd Avenue PB protected bike lane, as well as the 7th Avenue protected bike lane, we think that also helped. And that's evidenced by the counters on 2nd Avenue. Vehicles, also a part of the system. Our friends in Seattle Police Department did some vigorous parking, block the box, and transit lane enforcement, and we think that really helped. The daily volumes from the 6 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 7 p.m. peak periods were generally lower than the baseline. Our theory on that is that folks just spread the peak out. So instead of having it just be those 3 hours, it was longer than that. Permit revocations, we revoked permits to use the right-of-way for about 50 big job sites downtown. We had 6 citations and 85 warnings. I just really want to note that the construction community and the development community was remarkably supportive of this, even though it certainly cost them money to have to stop some of their jobs that way. We created seattle.gov/traffic and populated with real-time information, so that's a good one-stop shop for all information. We also had excellent interdepartmental and interagency communication, the best I've ever seen, and I know that that's going to serve us in good stead as we move forward. We had daily media availabilities and weekly press conferences, which were lots of fun, and some fun hashtags that we followed in social media. We're not done. As you all know, the Washington State Convention Center addition is under construction and is going to be creating some challenges for us in that area on through 2022. The next big thing for us is March 23rd when we end joint operations in the downtown Seattle Transit Tunnel, another thing I never thought I'd see. And then, of course, as we roll through the year, we're going to start construction on Alaskan Way. We're going to toll SR 99 tunnel, and that's going to definitely lead to diversion, another wrinkle. And buses will begin their final routing on two-way Columbia toward the end of the year. And what we're really looking forward to is the Alaskan Way main corridor opening, light rail to Northgate, and light rail to the east side. That's when we're going to start to see a little bit of relief.
Okay, before we go further, since Heather moved through so briskly, I'd like to just take a quick pause here and just tell you my first impressions walking in right before the viaduct closed, right? So I walked into daily meetings with the mayor and her staff going through all the detailed planning for this effort. Those meetings continued on a daily basis throughout the viaduct closure. So there is a focus and an accountability within the city on that. Similarly, on the same day, I walked into two Office of Emergency Management hosted meetings twice a day with all the internal stakeholders within the city, as well as the external stakeholders outside the city. You know, WashDOT, the Sound Transit, the Port Authority, all the external partners, Metro, all the players, twice a day. And we went over 4 common goals that the city devised, right? The first was maximize the flow of traffic through the core during the rush hours. 2, maximize, make sure we can get services throughout the period to our people, the safe flow of people and goods to their destinations. 3rd was to make sure that we had managed the needs of our own workforce to make sure that they were providing those services despite all the challenge of the viaduct closure. And then finally, as Heather's mentioned, coordinated communications, proactive within the city and the region that were consistent and aligned and proactive. So I thought that was pretty impressive. My first day of work, I'm going to see the mayor on the squeeze, I'm going to see OEM and learn about all these relationships inside and outside the city and do that twice a day. So we did that until we got this through the first few days of the squeeze, but then we downsized to the OEM to a daily thing because everybody was aligned and had traction and knew how we were identifying ideas and problems and resolving them as a team. Okay, now I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Chief Steve Herjek to talk about enforcement prevention.
So long before this closure occurred, we coordinated with the traffic planners at SDOT, and we were working together over a traffic plan that got bounced around and revised numerous times between our experience as police officers on the street and their experience in having to manage traffic flow. So we actually had officers deployed throughout a lot of the north of downtown area, some of the key intersections, as well as some of the choke points down south of downtown. None of the intersections, well, a good portion of the intersections were changing and fluid because we stationed a commander in the Traffic Operations Center so that we had no lag in communications in conjunction with SDOT as well as Metro. We had a Metro supervisor in the Traffic Operations Center, and we were reacting real time, so we would shift. A great example is that there was a problem on Post Avenue with buses trying to get across a traffic revision, and we were able to redeploy officers immediately. Within 15 minutes, we had traffic control set up with these officers there. The officers also served as a deterrent to bad behavior. I don't know if you saw Several of the officers, our officers, did a great job stepping out in the road and making sure that people didn't block the box. One of the most notable success stories was Aurora and Denny, where we had officers preventing that intersection from becoming blocked at any time. I watched them like hours on end on the traffic cameras live. Through coordination with SDOT, that was a huge success story because not only did we prevent the blocking the box, we rerouted traffic so we didn't have left turners that backed up Denny Way all the way back up into Inner Bay. By forcing them south and making them do a loop, they were able to feed more consistently into the Denny Way traffic. And that being able to react dynamically in real time like that was really great with having the officers out there. Seattle PD and the fire department have an excellent relationship to begin with already, so we are familiar with helping each other through corridors. However, in this case, we also incorporated the traffic planners at SDOT, which helped us look at where we could best utilize our chutes to get back and forth. But on top of that, we had aggressive parking enforcement. We were impounding dozens of cars a day that were parking in the emergency lanes that we had reserved for fire trucks. So the aggressive enforcement starting at 5:30 in the morning so that we always had a corridor for fire was great to keep our response times up. In fact, for the period of the viaduct closure, our response times were basically down. Our data showed that they were down. I don't credit our planning as much as I credit the citizens that stayed home. The residents of the area that decided to either telecommute or take transit really relieved traffic congestion for us. So a big thank you to the people of the Seattle area, not just people within the city limits, but the commuters that come in and out of the city. We also leveraged our state partnerships. We were able to get State Patrol to commit some resources along the main corridors coming in and out of Seattle, such as 99 and the 509, where they dedicated some of their normal east side patrol resources to the city of Seattle for the first 2 weeks until they saw that we really were getting along great thanks to the public's response. And then they went back to their normal patrol deployments. We also coordinated really well with the Port Authority as well as Burlington Northern Police helped us with some issues to get things resolved right away. So it was a great example of teamwork when we get multiple agencies working together.
Well, we saw your team out there on the street. I didn't get to watch them on the cameras as much, but it was great and definitely had an impact, which is great to see. The resources required to do that, I'm not sure how sustainable it is. And so one of the things we're working on in Olympia is to get some automated enforcement. They don't have the flexibility that having officers on the street do, but it hopefully can provide some of the enforcement to help those move forward. But it was great to see so many out there at multiple intersections on my commute.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. There wasn't a day the first 2 weeks where I didn't get thank yous for the officers in that area.
That's great.
Well, good. Well, we've covered a lot of this already. I know Heather has, but I'll just say that some of those 10 media events up there were region-wide, and that we had distributed, in addition to what you say into the media stories, we had over 70,000 postcards go out in the city in 13 different languages to various businesses and neighborhoods and communities, as well as 150 briefings. So that was a level of effort in preparing the city and the community for the viaduct closure. We also had trainer-trainer programs, which really worked out well in terms of consistent messaging throughout the city and then outside the city. And we, of course, built some robust web access points for all our city employees to make sure they were well resourced and trained to go get through this period. Next chart, please. In terms of the workforce, the team here had developed and gone out from all the parts of the city to take a good look at creating alternate work arrangements because we wanted to get our employees out of the city and out of the way as much as practical without putting at risk any services that we provide to the city. So we put together a portfolio of work options for our employees called alternative work arrangements. I mean, they range from compressed work hours to alternate work hours to telework at home, a whole range of those under a pilot program that we're monitoring weekly. And we've gotten real good participation to date from the city managers and the departments to allow their people to either work from home or work outside the rush hours. And so I thought that was a very successful thing, and the IT tools were implemented to support that. Next chart. Okay. Additionally, we wanted to we wanted to make sure we got the services out of the core, I guess, as much as practical, right? So what we did was SPU worked with solid waste removal contractor to get them outside the rush hour. Parks and Recreation extended some of their hours so that the off-shift workers or the adjusted hours workers could still be accommodated in terms of childcare. And then we had permit counter operations from some of our organizations move their hours to outside to avoid bringing customers into the core to receive those services. Similarly, we moved those same folks, moved their inspection vehicles out of the downtown core, and they could still get their mission done without going across the core from inside the core in some of our departments. And several departments relocated staff where they had facilities outside the core, just moved the staffs outside the core to lighten the load of our employees being in that congested area. And those that had vehicles and equipment stockpiled and staged them around for response, quicker response, or to avoid crossing the core during their normal day-to-day operations. And then a lot of our departments built or made online services available to convince the customers that they could do it at home or they could do it outside the core. So there was an extensive effort across the city for many months to work all this, and it was a citywide effort also. Next chart, please. I don't think you can really understand the product of all this detailed planning and length unless you have an incident. And this incident could have gone bad. It could have led to major gridlock and potential national news. It was on a Friday afternoon. Traffic was mounting. And 2:16 in the afternoon on the 25th of January, there was a charter bus used by the Stanford track team. It was northbound on I-5 near South Spokane Street. And it started smoking. And the WSDOT cameras saw it, but because they share the cameras with SDOT and others, we were able to kind of look and see what was happening when the alert came from WSDOT. SDOT and Seattle Fire were able to respond very quickly. And that smoke turned to fire, and 31 athletes from Stanford, out of that bus, along with the driver, as the Seattle Fire Department arrived from all directions. It was a hot fire. When they arrived, they got it out in 20 minutes, which was amazing. They ran a hose 2,000 feet down to Airport Way to get to a fire hydrant to sustain fighting the spalling that was going on underneath the hot bus and on the overpass, because it might be a structural risk. Meanwhile, WSDOT scrambled their on-call structural engineer, and the police had already blocked off, had Airport Way or Airport Road blocked off so that the fire department could hook it up. And Metro offered an emergency rescue bus to get there. So from the time of the alert, which was smoking, to the time that the first lane of traffic was moving again was 50 minutes. And within 2 hours and about 2.5 hours of the initial alarm, we were having a press conference with all the stakeholders there describing what had just transpired. And then shortly after that, the big tow truck was able to take the charter bus off and flow resumed. So it was an example of collaboration and practice together, and it was a regional success story. And I just wanted to kind of end with that. Let's go to the next.
That's a great example. I appreciate you highlighting what can be done. Obviously, again, fairly resource intensive, but it's amazing what we can accomplish there. And that's a great story with a great ending. Nobody hurt, and
the
pretty
team got
amazing.
to their next event with all their equipment. Our fire people got all their equipment out of it. So,
I don't know, maybe not all the equipment if we want to make sure that the Huskies are beating Stanford. I don't know how hard we try there, but that's okay.
All right. And so the way ahead, we've kind of talked about a lot of this. I know Heather has. We are going to do an internal citywide after-action report, probably mid to late February, because we got to get all that data in so we can get a good quality sort of a citywide look at what we learned, how we can do better. Are there any seams within the departments we need to work on before the next big chapter of the squeeze comes along? And shortly after that, I've got agreement with all the regional leaders to host a region-wide hot wash after everybody has time to do their own internal, whether it's WSDOT or Metro or Port Authority or Sound Transit and all the players. We're going to get together and BNSF and Downtown Seattle Association want to participate in that too. So we should get some good feedback from the private sector too. When we do that, we'll make sure that there's no daylight between us, I guess, as we go to the next major perturbation of the squeeze. But for us is the tunnel's coming out on the 23rd of March.
March 23rd.
So that's kind of our story and our quick sort of report out on how it went.
Great.
Anything else?
No, thanks.
I really appreciate the quick report back. I appreciate all the work that you and your team have done. I want to just reiterate to the public that, there was an article in the Times a week or so in saying 90,000 trips just disappeared. And I want to be clear that that isn't just something that randomly happened. There's a lot of work that went in for months of planning in anticipation of what happened. There was a lot of investment in some strategic places, and we heard some stories about that today. And then, of course, thousands and thousands of people made small to large changes in their behavior. And the result was that, in fact, we demonstrated how resilient we can be as a city. And I know that was a short-term closure with some short-term solutions we came up with. But I think it's important for us to remember that we're capable of doing some pretty amazing things. And, we had the weather working with us, too. That didn't hurt at all. But it was pretty incredible to see something not materialize like we had feared because of a lot of people's great work and a lot of community members that chose to try some alternatives, which paid off really well.
Heather, about 10,000 of Councilmember O'Brien's constituents and mine are about to move from 4th Avenue or the tunnel into a 5th, 6th pathway. How close are we in terms of finishing up that 5th, 6th pathway work before March 23rd?
It's going to be done before March 23rd.
Great.
Sure.
Great. And I would just, I would ask us to continue to work with Metro to street team in anticipation of that. As I've talked to some of my fellow bus riders about those changes, I think that there's still a lot of room for improvement in terms of information out to those folks that in the next couple of months, their commute's going to change, admittedly only by a block. But even that one block change, I think, will be disorienting for a lot of folks.
No, I think that that's absolutely true. And one of the things that Metro is particularly skilled at is that street teaming effort and communicating with their constituents, their riders. The place where we're going to sort of fill in and backstop them is talking to, the whole rest of the community. But thank you for that. It is really important. In addition, they're going to street team not just for the buses coming out of the tunnel, but also for off-board fare payment on 3rd Avenue. So there's going to be a significant presence of Metro, and I know that many of us at SDOT have volunteered to help with that as well.
Great. Thank you all. Really appreciate that.
So this is the part where I foretell that I have some childcare coverage issues tonight, Councilmember O'Brien. So you have a choose your own adventure pathway here. You could take that 4th agenda item and have me around for it, or you could take the bold decision of voting something out of committee by yourself, should you choose so. I've got till about 4:35 before I need to disappear because my wife has work tonight, so that I can get home in time to get the kids so that she can get to work. So it's your call.
I'm going to keep the order going because I'd rather have you here for the conversation, and I'll do the bold move of voting it out by myself, unless you have some concerns about that vote.
I have none.
Great. Okay. So, okay. Sorry, go ahead and get on the microphone.
This is what we've been trying to do for 15 years. This is a fantastic presentation.
Sorry, hold on one second. Doug, just one second.
Is terrific.
Hold it,
The only
Doug,
thing
I
I
want to
would
get you on the,
say
there we go.
is that if you think the 90,000 trips have disappeared, they have not. And this dynamic process just goes on and continues. It is wonderful to see what we've seen today. We should be seeing this every meeting at this committee.
Great. Thank you, Doug. And Mr. Warden, if you don't know, Doug McDonald's a former head of WashDOT. So, next agenda item. Jesse, do you want to read that into the record?
Agenda item number 3, Sidewalk Management and Direct Enforcement Plan in response to Bicycle Share Fee Schedule Ordinance 125634.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Why don't we start with introductions?
Okay, my name is Christina Van Valkenburg. I'm the interim director of the Transit and Mobility Division in SDOT.
Christina.
I'm Joel Miller. I am the Bike Share Program Manager at SDOT.
Thanks you both for being here.
Well, thank you for having us. We're here today. We're very excited to report on the Bike Share 2.0, and that is a new mobility. It's an increased mobility that we're providing to the folks in Seattle. And as you heard on Heather's presentation, it has helped, has been one of the choices that probably helped during the closure, of the viaduct. As you know, bikes are allowed in the city of Seattle in the sidewalks. In fact, when we look at our policies and plans, they do support a shared sidewalk. And the quote that I got from one of the policy documents is that a shared sidewalk space is a key element of livable communities, providing a safe and convenient place for people to bike and walk as part of their daily activities. However, as you have heard comments today, and we have heard, other comments, there has been a concern with increased number of bicycles in a sidewalk due to bike shares operations. And we do recognize that, and we take that very seriously. And we are trying to understand what are the potential impacts and potential conflicts that can create between bikes and pedestrians, especially folks with disabilities, the elderly, moms with strollers, children biking, etc. As the program continues to evolve, we are committed to pay attention to those issues based on data that we receive and collect through our process, which Joe is going to be talking more about. And we'll continue working diligently to learn and have a continuous improvement approach to how we manage the bike share program in the city of Seattle. The presentation today addressed two of the provisions that were included in a previous bike share ordinance approved last year. And next slide. So the two provisions that we'll respond to, one is the Section 4 that basically asked us to provide a plan for direct enforcement of bike share parking requirements. And Joe is going to be speaking to that. The second is a short summary, and you have received the two reports. That is, the ordinance required us to provide a plan for sidewalk management and safety, addressing the increasing use of fast-moving electric motor devices on sidewalks. Before Joe starts his presentation, I want to directly address a question that has come up several times, which relates to why 20,000 bicycles. And we, as you know, during the phase one, during the pilot, the bike share pilot, we had 10,000 bikes operating in the city of Seattle. Based on our assessment of that pilot, we came to realize that given the interest and the demand for bike share bikes in certain areas of the city, we need to serve the entire city. And 10,000 bikes would not allow for that full service. So therefore, we estimated that 20,000 bikes would be the appropriate number. Of course, we will continue working and making improvements to the program, and that may be that 20 are too much or 20,000 are not enough. But that is part of our learning process and our continuous improvement and commitment to make sure this is a successful program and provides mobility options for the city of Seattle. With that, Joe.
Christina, can I ask a follow-up related to that? I mean, you talk about evaluating the system, and that leads me to a question related to the systems that have left. I mean, we started with our free-floating pilot with 3 different bike share companies, and and 2 left the market, and 1 is still in the market, and now we've got a second who's in the marketplace too. And those have been great, but much has been made publicly of why those other 2 companies left, and some of it I can read between the tea leaves has to do with their other financial commitments in other countries, but some of it seems to be rooted in just sort of what they deemed to be an administrative process that was pretty burdensome. Have we taken further stock of that to see whether or not there is an opportunity for us to not only just look at the number of bikes, but that the process that we ask companies to go through in order to increase the number of competitors in this marketplace, where we do have a lot of folks that do want to use this new mobility option?
Yeah, I'll let Joe to speak more to that since you worked on evaluation, but I do agree with your point. I think it's important for us to create efficiencies. We want to balance the needs for regulating, the bike share providers, while at the same time creating an environment that provides the types of mobility options that encourage folks to choose for, other ways than just, driving their vehicle. And bike can be considered a transit. It's certainly an extension. It provides a first and last miles, connection for those people that use transit. So I think this is a point well taken. And with the evaluation with this year moving forward, we definitely behoove us for continue to understand what is our process and what, how far can we go and what is the right balance to manage the operations of those systems without overburden, participation and competitiveness.
So put it differently, Joel, did we do like an exit interview with people as they left and ask them sort of how we could do work better, more efficiently?
We had informal exit interviews, and I think of the companies that left, 1 pretty much pulled out of the U.S. and is on its, by all accounts, last legs internationally. And the other pretty much exited the bike share game and is focusing on other micromobility options. And so we needed to balance our city's goals and of this bike share program, and each operator that came needed to be able to serve the whole city and responsibly serve the whole city. So not just put bikes on the street, but put enough bikes that they could serve all of the city and not just the city center or the U District or Fremont or something like that. And that restricted some of the very small vendors in the nation. And then we also needed to see just that they have the resources to, once those bikes are out on the street, they can responsibly manage the right of way. We'll continue to right-size this program as it goes forward, but we did see that there was enough companies out there that would come in and be able to serve the city at the scale that we wanted, that we could have that ask and really have a successful program this year. But like you said, we'll continue to evaluate that going forward.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Christina.
Yeah. Welcome.
So I'm going to move into talking a little bit about what we're doing to directly enforce the bike share parking rules. One thing we paid a lot of attention to when we rewrote the permit and drastically extended the permit was, do we have very clear rules and regulations of how bikes should be left on the street? And we feel like we did that. And what we also wanted to do is make sure we had a mechanism to go out and proactively judge that parking. In the pilot, we were looking at reports only, so we didn't have the resources to be out on the street. With this new permit, we do have the resources, and we're going to be focusing that on a direct compliance auditing program. That is getting city staff, and later as we get contracting underway, a third party to randomly sample different neighborhoods in the city and go judge how every single bike in that neighborhood is parked. That'll be, is the bike perfectly correctly parked? Is it incorrectly parked but not blocking? Is it blocking, or is it a full ADA violation? We'll make those judgments. We'll collect all that data. Once we have enough, we'll go forward and publish these quarterly reports and go forward with some of the later enforcement penalties I'll talk about. In addition to that, we'll be doing targeted audits with city staff. So in addition to the random sampling, one thing we heard in a lot of outreach was some worry that a random sample wouldn't capture the whole problem. And we know that there's areas near transit, especially in other high-use areas, where there may be higher instances of misparked bikes. So we'll also be out in those areas collecting data on a different cadence as well. So the direct compliance auditing has that both random sampled portion and then the targeted portion as well. In addition to that, we'll be verifying the vendor data. We have a lot more data coming in and a lot more robust data requirements in this permit. And we'll be requiring the vendors to tell us where the bikes are, what are the status of those bikes, are they available for rental, are they not charged and need a charge or something like that for the e-bikes. And that gets to direct permit compliance of are they meeting their fleet size requirements? Are they over their fleet size requirements? And are they meeting their equity area minimums, where 10% of their fleet needs to be in certain areas of the city? We'll also be on the ground verifying that data, so not just collecting it, but when we're on the street doing these audits, we'll be able to say, okay, is this bike correctly reporting itself as whatever the status might be? In addition to that, we'll be verifying vendor data reports that are required on a monthly cadence of how many reports did they get of a misparked bike and when did they respond to those reports. The same data for maintenance issues. So we'll not only be collecting that data, analyzing it, but we'll also be sending our own reports in an anonymous way to check that the vendor data is correct. That all gets into some direct enforcement penalties that are written into the new permit, and those are focused on fleet reductions. If a company is not complying with either their parking goals, their maintenance goals, whatever it might be, we have the authority to reduce their fleets, especially if it's an incident where a certain company isn't educating their users properly and people are not parking the bike correctly. Not only will those fleet reductions impact their market share, but it'll lessen the number of their bikes, which would be the problem bikes on the street. So we see that solving those problems in a couple different ways. And if there's incidents of bad behavior and dishonest reporting, we can always still have the authority to revoke these street use permits. This will all be provided in quarterly reports that we'll make public. We're happy to come back and talk to you guys about that as we ramp these programs up. We'll be fully transparent with what the results of the audits are and what enforcement actions may have been taken.
So, Joel, when did we switch from a complaint-based system to actually having some people on the street doing proactive enforcement?
In January. So the bike share permit, we issued the first new permit in November, and we were fully permitted in January. And that's when we started spinning this up and having people on the street.
Great. And so what's the timing on some of the other things? Like, are we already collecting the additional data? Is that?
Yep, we are collecting that data. There's some spin-up time with our own in-house IT systems to store that data, to access it. But we do have some sort of heavier touch mechanisms right now where we're manually getting CSVs for that data, and we're able to analyze that. And we just were able to release our first kind of preliminary data report for what December looked like, and within the next few weeks we'll be able to do the same for January.
Great. And then so it's safe to assume we'll get the first quarterly report will be for first quarter of this year?
Yeah, and it'll come probably mid-April.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite quick.
We'll be collecting that data as we're putting it forward. So,
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The next step for this, and we got into a little bit of this, we've already started the audits, and we'll be spinning up that third-party contract this month. The data verification reporting is also ongoing, and we are also having ongoing outreach with the modal boards. We spoke to Bike Board in December. We spoke to the Pedestrian Board in December and January. Last year, we had a lot of outreach with the Pedestrian Access and Advisory Committee, and also a lot of the groups representing people living with disabilities in the Seattle area. A lot of that went in to help craft this program, and we'll be continuing that outreach, especially as it can help inform the evolvement of this program, and then specifically those targeted audits and what we're trying to reach with that. Now I'm going to move into that section 6 of the legislation and discuss sidewalk management before handing it back to Christina. We're going to discuss the current tools and regulations, the sort of the toolbox that we have at our disposal right now, and some of the policy considerations of this rather large question. So this slide goes over what the actual legislation is. I know there's sometimes some confusion on this. The SMC right now says that bicycles are allowed to be ridden on sidewalks, but the bicyclists must yield to pedestrians, and they must operate at a speed that is reasonable and proper under the conditions. So that's the existing law for bikes. For e-bikes, this was updated last year at the state level, and it allows class 1 and 2 e-bikes on sidewalks. Class 1 and 2 e-bikes, I'll get into that briefly. A class 1 e-bike is essentially a bike that you have to pedal, but the electric assist will help you up to about 20 miles an hour. A class 2 e-bike is the same, but you can choose to not pedal, and there's a little throttle that will get you up to 20 miles an hour. Just for clarity, the bike share e-bikes are all class 1 e-bikes, and we actually limit that top speed to 15 that the assist works to rather than 20, so a little bit lower than the state definition. And then class 3 go up to 28 miles an hour and are still pedal assist. You have to pedal those bikes. And those, by the state definition, are not allowed on sidewalks. E-scooters are a topic that a lot of people are asking about right now. Those are also not allowed on sidewalks. Any questions about that?
So the second 2 bullets about e-bikes and e-scooters, those are both state law, not city.
Exactly.
How an e-bike, class 1 or class 2 e-bike, that can go 20 miles an hour. It's hard for me to imagine 20 miles an hour meeting the speed that is reasonable under proper conditions in any environment.
Mm-hmm.
And so I assume the state law doesn't mean you can go 20 miles an hour on a sidewalk. Our city law would still prevail there, but how do we manage that, the interaction?
Yeah, in one of the presentations to the Pedestrian Advisory Board, one of the framing discussions was, let's talk about behavior and let's talk about speeds rather than let's talk about actual modes. So that would be one way to get at that. But it is a large, difficult question. I know that, the class 1 e-bikes can go 20 miles an hour with assist. That doesn't mean they have to go 20 miles an hour, just like, cars might go 100, and that's not at all appropriate. And so that's sort of the framing of it, but your question of how do we specifically address that issue, those are recommendations that I think we'll need to talk about more. There was the slide that you put in the 2019 budget that addresses that as well, and I think it's a larger discussion than kind of where this is more scope to what are our tools that we have at our disposal right now.
It's complicated and it's hard, and I think we're doing some of the work downtown in neighborhoods to create a safe place for bicyclists that isn't on the sidewalk and isn't on the mixed in with the motor vehicles. But we know that network is in its infancy still, and there's lots of places throughout the community where bicyclists may feel unsafe riding on the road, but needs to be on the sidewalk. But then do they do that at the expense of a pedestrian who doesn't feel safe sharing the space with bicyclists? And then how do we enforce this behavior? I'm curious, do we have any data on actual enforcement?
We don't have the hard statistics of X amount of tickets that may have been issued, but in our conversations with SPD, we do know it's very, very light. Yeah. And it's been not flagged as a priority.
Yeah.
But
and I get that. I think, as we're working with the vendors, this is where there needs to be some shared responsibility with these, private companies that are coming in and working here because they do have probably some of the tools. They can kick people off their platform if they're behaving improperly. They can do all sorts of reminders through apps. They can, there's a lot of education that they can do. But I think we as a regulator have a role to play in making sure that we're setting really clear expectations with those providers of what it means to be a good citizen, good corporate citizen in our city, and what we expect out of their customers who are our citizens too.
Exactly. And you provided a great transition to some of those other tools that we have that aren't the code, and that gets into, just like you said, vendor education. What are the vendors saying to the users? How can we incentivize them to do more than they're already doing? But part of the permit does require that they are educating the users on proper riding behavior, on yielding to pedestrians. And we just need to work with them on doing more of that and doing it better. Also, the blockages, the whole parking issue. Again, that even though it's not a moving bike, it's still it's an impediment on the sidewalk. And those vendors' responses to the blockages, our audits, and the penalties. We all see that as tools that could go into easing this this upcoming conflict. And then, just like you said, there's also infrastructure questions of. Are we building more bike lanes? And I know with the levy to move Seattle, the BMP, the Center City Bike Network, those are all efforts to really concentrate and build more bike lanes. And then through the bike share program, really increasing good places to park these bikes. And we're taking 40% of those permit fees to really, really ramp up bike parking citywide. We've redesigned a bike parking corral. That's a sort of an on-street spot that's usually near the intersection. Our traditional design and sort of the national traditional design is 3 racks centered in a 17-foot spot. We've simply moved those racks over so that you have a good place for personal bikes, maybe bike share bikes that have a lock, and then also a big open area for more bike share bikes, for cargo bikes and family bikes and things like that. So really trying to increase that space that allows this to happen. That's great. If there's more questions on that, I will pass it back to Christina, who's going to get a little bit more into the policy considerations.
Maybe really quick, Joel, the year and a half, is that only how long?
Yeah, started in July of last year, of the year before.
Okay, so over that period, we've seen a couple vendors leave, a fourth vendor come. Are we seeing improvement in, is there any way that the city can track, the number of missed parkings or the number of incidents on sidewalks? And do we feel like it's getting better or?
Yeah, we haven't done enough of that auditing yet to really be comfortable coming back with numbers. Yeah. But we do have a baseline in that we went out in the pilot and said about between 4% and 6% of bikes were blocking, and that was what was in the pilot, and that's why we're aiming for 3% in this next iteration of the permit, with the goal of that going down year by year by year. Right. And so. We don't have that yet, but we are working towards having that.
That's great. Well, I appreciate that we've established a baseline because that's an important first step.
Yeah.
So as we're saying, I think this is a relatively new program, and we do recognize that there is a potential conflict between pedestrians and bicycles and other mobility devices on the sidewalk. So we start having a conversation and doing some thinking and looking at some of the literature to understand what are some of policy considerations that we need to understand and keep in mind as we consider a different regulatory framework, which probably will be further discussed, later on when we come back, here with the response to the slide, later in the summer. But things that we have already, we found that safety, equity, and comfort are three big issues that need to be taken into consideration moving forward with with identifying new tools for managing, the sidewalk operations of bike share. On the safety side, as you know, you said that some folks don't feel comfortable riding in any, other way than the sidewalk unless there are some separated bicycle facilities, especially children. They feel much safer riding a bike in a sidewalk. So we need to kind of look at the different folks, and what is the comfort level of, for an example, if we were to prohibit, use of bicycles in a sidewalk, for an example. We need to balance, the safety and the way that people would feel riding in case you don't have a separated bicycle facility. Another element is equity. A lot of areas of the city where we may want to encourage more bicycle ridership, we also don't have the sufficient, there has been disinvestment, and we don't have the same number of bicycle facilities or protected bike lanes. So we need to be careful about looking at making some decisions regarding who can ride or who cannot ride on a sidewalk, kind of making sure that the equity is one consideration, moving forward. And the third element is, of course, comfort. We recognize that sidewalk is a place where pedestrians need to be comfortable, where the elderly and the disabled and the children need to feel comfortable. So when we look at different tools for our toolbox to help managing bike share, comfort of the users of the sidewalk has to continue to be one of the elements that will look. So basically, it's going to be a balance, looking at those three different things, those three policy elements, and probably even more, and create, continue to identify tactics and alternatives for managing the sidewalk that balances all those three elements.
And I appreciate, highlighting that bicycle pedestrian collisions are rare, but also bringing up comfort because, even if there's not a collision, but someone is spooked by a fast rising biker that it feels like a near miss to them, that just can ruin your day and can make you fearful about being on the sidewalks at all, and it takes us in an opposite direction. And so, the thing that I struggle with the bike share bikes is, and frankly, all the other new micro mobility options that are out there, is these have the potential to radically transform our transportation system in ways that can be extremely positive from a climate perspective, from a congestion perspective, from a mobility perspective. And if we do it at the expense, especially the expense of our most vulnerable people in our community, it's not worth it. I mean, and the thing is, we have to do it. We have to find some solutions to all those problems, and we have to do it in a way that it's not on individual's backs.
Totally.
And that's going to require, a lot of work. And I want to highlight, Joel, I think you mentioned some outreach to some of our modal boards. I know that there are people on, in addition to the pedestrian and the bike modal boards, the transit board. Those folks are also pedestrians at the beginning or ending of every trip. And how these interact with last mile and provide a great connection for transit, but can also inhibit transit users. And then the Commission on People with Disabilities, I think would be great. And I don't know if it, as we work through this and probably are considering other options that are going to, new technologies evolve, if there's, if it would be worthwhile to convene a kind of subcommittee / cross committee of all four of those to come together and provide some regular feedback and look at the data and give us some, provide some suggestions. There's a lot of really great thinkers out there who care cross-platforms.
Definitely, you can definitely consider this. As I said, this is a learning, is a continuous learning for us. Even around the country, we are currently looking for best practices. And when it comes to, sidewalk, pedestrian, how you manage potential conflict, what are the best tools out there, I think this is something that will be more coming as more cities go through this experience. But I'm totally, I think convening some folks that have some different interests and knowledge that can bring onto the conversation, I think would be a very good idea, a very good step forward.
That's great. Well, I would love to help in getting that set up and participating. I think we have these built-in focus groups that are really experts in our community that are dedicated to finding solutions. So.
Yeah, we'll be presenting at the next Pedestrian Access Advisory Committee meeting. I believe that's in March.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we are also, last year we did our own disability-focused outreach, and we had a great meeting, public meeting, that was really focused on solving some of these problems. We're looking at replicating that this year as well. And then, we're happy to talk more about some sort of cross-committee approach as well.
Yeah, and I'll look to some of the volunteers on those various boards to ask them what the best way they would like to contribute. Maybe more committee meetings is not helpful and what they'd rather have is presentation in their committee, or maybe that the cross-collaboration would feel really beneficial and help us vet some ideas too.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. And next steps, we will consider, as Joe indicated, we'll continue with a bike park installation. It's our goal to add additional 1,500 bicycle parking spaces on street. And we are poised to move forward and try to build as much as possible, starting now through the summer, through the drying seasons, when it helps. Again,
say that number again, Christina. 1,000.
1,500.
And so, how is a typical corral, as you described it? Is that like 10 spots or?
That's 6 spots, a typical corral.
Spots.
Yeah.
So, and when you say on street, are we talking mostly corrals then, or are we talking?
Yeah, mostly corrals.
So I can do the math there almost. That's like 250 corrals.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah, so we have, Joe, we have brought additional resources. So we are working with our crews currently during the downtime, since we don't have a lot of work on the street due to the viaduct. So we are already installing, we're using those resources that we currently have to be out there installing additional bike parking. We will continue doing more outreach. I appreciate your suggestion of creating some type of focus group to focus on bike share, and we'll discuss that further. And we'll be, as a next stop here, unless you invite us to come before that, we'll be here with this live response sometime in the summer, as this live is due at the end of June.
A couple other quick questions before we wrap up. One around the enforcement for bike share. The 2 tools that you mentioned in the slides were essentially taking away some of their privileges, but I didn't see like monetary penalties. And is the analysis that we think that the privilege to be here is more significant than them writing a check?
Yeah, one of the lessons we learned in the pilot and just kind of studying the field was that there's a lot of these firms come with a healthy amount of venture capital behind them, and then with Uber and Lyft entering, that's just greatly multiplied. And so we wanted to make sure that whatever enforcement actions we had impacted not maybe that venture capital, but their ability to compete in Seattle, as this is a competitive market. Moreover, we didn't want a very, very well-funded firm to just be able to ignore the rules and the compliance issues and write checks.
Great. I appreciate that. Also talked about the analysis that brought us to at least the proposal of around 20,000 bikes citywide and wanting to have coverage citywide. With our permits with these vendors, do we have requirements in place on the distribution? There are certain neighborhoods, you mentioned some, where there's probably a lot of demand, and there's other neighborhoods where, at least initially, I could see where folks may say, it doesn't make sense. But my fear would be that if they tried to put all 20,000 bikes in downtown Seattle as opposed to spread them out. So how do we manage that?
Yeah, they are required to cover the whole city. With e-bikes, we gave them a little bit of lag time, a couple months, or 6 months, I believe, actually, before they had to cover the whole city. But eventually, each company has to cover the whole city.
So that means that the zone you can pick up or drop off in is the whole city.
And then we also we did some analysis on where in the pilot not many bike share bikes were, and overlaid that with neighborhoods that had low access to opportunity but high displacement risk. And we found that those neighborhoods we called equity focus areas, and requiring that each morning at 5 a.m., 10% of the fleets are in those neighborhoods.
Okay, great. And then how about any concern about over-concentration in the more popular, more dense areas where I'm guessing sidewalk space and parking space is at a premium?
Yeah, we didn't have a mechanism in the permit to say that's too many bikes. They can't place more than, I believe it's 15 bikes on one block face. Okay. But we also saw that the audits were really, the negative externality of too many bikes on a block is that the bikes are not going to be organized and they're going to be blocking and causing problems. And so we saw really that was taken care of with the audit approach.
Okay. Look forward to hearing more mechanisms develop as we learn more about what's happening. Yeah. Great. Thank you all for being here. I know we're a little over time, but I appreciate you sticking around.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jesse, do you want to read that last agenda item and I'll invite presenters forward?
Council Bill 119457, an ordinance granting Seattle Children's Research Institute permission to construct, install, and maintain one set of private communication conduits under and across Terry Avenue south of Virginia Street and north of Stewart Street.
I'm going to see you every committee meeting, Amy. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Amy Gray, and I work for the Seattle Department of Transportation.
Great. As quickly as you can get through this, the better for me. I've had a chance to look at it, but why don't you give us a quick overview?
We'll make it short and sweet. So the proposed term permit ordinance is to allow private communication conduits under Terry Avenue south of Virginia Street, and in the alley between Virginia and Stewart Streets north of 9th Avenue. Okay. Seattle Children's Research Institute is asking to use existing conduits that provide temporary power supply to the newly constructed building located at 1920 Terry Avenue, and that is currently fed by 1915 Terry. The use of these existing temporary infrastructure to lay the conduit, take out the power supply, and lay the private conduit makes it so that they don't have to tear up the street at a later date when they're ready for the conduit to be placed. And it will serve 3 Seattle Children's Research buildings. These communication conduits will allow the sharing of data between the new research lab, other research facilities and other buildings, and admin. And these are all related to research into children-related diseases. Here's just a map showing the general area. And that's a larger map. Technically, I guess it's South Lake Union, but it's a little east of that. Yeah. The 2019 fee, if this is approved, will be $2,841, and we will have a bond on the conduit in case they walk away and we need to remove it. And we're asking council and making a recommendation to approve this term permit ordinance.
Great. It seems pretty straightforward. Obviously, folks in the community love the great work that Children's Hospital is doing. So, yes. Appreciate your kind of rigorous analysis to make sure that this fits in there. So with that, I will go ahead and move Council Bill 119457, and I will also second it. This is the moment that Councilmember Johnson was referring to that's a little awkward, but, and I will vote in favor of recommending this to the full council for passage. I'll say aye there. There are no nays. So thanks for your work on this, and we'll get this to full council
Thank you very
next
much.
week. Great. With that, we are adjourned. Hey, Bill.